Good? Kathy, you ready? All right, I'd like to call our Finance and Audit meeting for September 5th, 2024 to order at 8:30 a.m. We have two members missing, Carolyn and Terry, and Brian is on the phone wanting to call in, so I'll entertain a motion to allow that to happen. Teresa, Kelly, any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Teresa and Kelly, any questions or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Public comment. I saw Cal signed up. Anyone else? Just Cal.
The Conservation District asking for a 25% operating rate increase forever. I'm here to remind you that you guys promised to cut the levy for the mental health board. Now, you can cut that levy, I assume you will, and I'm certainly hopeful that you will not capture it someplace else.
Okay. Are there any other public comments? Okay, if not, we'll go to member comments. Are there any member comments? No? All right, we are on to routine consent agenda. Are there items that members would like pulled? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the routine consent agenda, items 1 through 9. Teresa and Kelly. We'll go to vote. Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. We're on to old business. If it's okay with the committee, I'd like to have the presentations that we had asked for first before we make any motions. Is that okay with the committee?
Yes.
Okay. So then the first one is MCEDC. Thanks everyone for coming on down. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me at what is my second rodeo. So today we're here to talk about the service contract between the county board and the MCEDC for economic development services. And what I've prepared is a kind of a budget comparison that's in front of you. And on the first page, you'll see our 2024 budget, which you'll see the county's contract services at $160,000. And then figure 2 on the next page is a projected county service contract. It's not by year. It is basically aligned if you were to increase the county service contract with the MCDC by the indicated amounts.
Hey
So,
Mark,
yes.
my sheets are exactly the same.
Oh no.
Is that
Mine are different.
Are they?
Mine are the same.
Here's a different one.
Mine are the same.
Okay.
Yours are the same.
Yeah.
Here, here's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian was saying his are the same too. Did you email this to us too?
No.
I'm looking at my email.
I did not email this.
How did Brian have it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
What do you have, Brian?
I just have the copy of agreement between the county and McHenry and the EDC. That's it.
Oh, you have the copy of the contract?
He's not holding this.
No, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I apologize. One of the key expense areas that we want to improve is technology. And that may aid us in getting a printer that will staple in a collated fashion. So what I what I've done here is sort of outline the 4 categories that we are looking at towards expense growth. And I wanted to, outline if we were to receive an increase, where we would put that money, what we would put that money towards. And those key areas are namely marketing and advertising and marketing, which entails increased targeted campaigns to promote business attraction and retention, collaborating with partner organizations like naturally McHenry County to do targeted advertising for businesses seeking to relocate within the county or from outside of the county. That goes hand in hand with improvements to the MCEDC's website, which I consider to be the portal into McHenry County's business landscape. What I'd really like to see there is on-demand access to local and state incentive programs in a timely fashion so that our business community can go on there and access and say, hey, here's what's available to me. This is a great opportunity to engage with the MCEDC and see how we can take advantage of some of these. Another thing that I'd like to include between marketing and advertising, as well as improving the website, is a relocation guide, which would be a comprehensive guide for offering prospective and new residents the essential resources for moving into the McHenry County area. This would also be something I'd look towards collaborating with naturally McHenry County on. Additionally, we also want to include a regional asset map that discusses our regional and local transportation, our infrastructure, including access to utilities, and then assets by industry and natural resources. And like I said, we're looking towards modernization of equipment, which basically our technology and equipment at our offices are outdated. We're still on desktop. We're still on a lot of paper filing, and I think that we could better serve the county if we had access to increased tech resources. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding what I presented.
Members? Larry?
On the salary and wages, it says originally budgeted for 3 employees. How many employees are there?
So we are 2 employees currently. Where does it say budgeted for 3?
On the front page, it's salaries and wages, originally budgeted for 3 employees.
Yeah, so this is the original budget from 2024. And so when that was written last December, it was budgeted for 3 employees, and now there's 2.
You're creating a little space for a potential third employee.
Correct, yep.
This is it.
And so you'll see if you look at the future revenue, or I'm sorry, the future projected county service contract, I adjusted it so that it reflected the current agreement, the current contract between the county and MCEDC, where the county, we have the cost neutral agreement that the county holds our payroll and benefits, and then we true up at the end of the year or each fiscal quarter.
Do you have other questions, Larry?
I don't.
Okay. Kelly?
Just, so the payroll fees, what line item are they going into now?
So now that's all included in that human
It
resources
is,
line
okay.
item. Yeah, it's all combined as one line item, since it isn't, going to be separate on our individual budget.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Other members?
Are we gonna talk? Oh, do you want to talk about the budget now, or do you want to do that later? I mean, I see the layout.
What do you mean by the budget?
Well, he's showing the future options for different for the budgets.
Correct.
Because we're gonna take this into the resolution.
Correct.
So I guess I do have a question. I see the increase of $15,000. What would significantly change as our funds would increase to you?
What would be some of the significant impact of that?
Yeah.
So as you can see, with our current funding level, if we were to increase that, that would afford us an increase in that advertising and marketing as well as the enhancements to the website. So I believe with an increase there, we'd be able to, better promote to external businesses as well as provide resources to McHenry County businesses that are seeking them. I mean, I think our outreach is improved drastically at any funding level.
Mark, maybe you want to note that you've shaded the ones that are going to increase.
Yes, so
Didn't catch that.
the green shaded, thanks Pete, the green shaded items are the targeted areas of growth. And what I've done with the revenue side, I've increased it to what I've projected for 2025 and beyond. So you'll see an increase in investment. I know that, while we're requesting an increase on the county side, there is a significant responsibility on the organization to increase private investment as well, right? We've got to, we've got to balance both sides. It's not something where we can exclusively rely on the county's funds. So you'll see that increase in private sector investments, as well as a slight increase in program revenue. And that's something those numbers that I have there, I'm very confident we can reach. And as a matter of fact, I anticipate reaching that level of investment in 2024, which is about $30,000 higher than the investment from 2024. It was originally budgeted for.
So as naturally McHenry County, we will be talking about them too. We invest in them. And so do municipalities. Is there any chance that municipalities will also contribute to the MCEDC because they are also going to benefit from it?
Absolutely. Many already do as investors, and we intend to further that relationship. One specific initiative that we're undertaking right now is the re-engagement of the EDGE group, which is the Economic Development Growth Experts. We're going to convene that on October 2nd, and that's going to bring in as many of the municipalities as possible. So whether it is their economic development professionals, whether it's village presidents, whomever they feel they see as fit to be there in Shaylin. It's a partnership between the McHenry County COG and the MCEDC. And that's going to provide an opportunity for us to talk about best practices in site selection, what economic incentives we want to collaboratively work together on to ensure that they get to the businesses in our community. One of the first topics that we're going to discuss is business incubators. How do we sustain and grow effective incubation in McHenry County? As you've seen, they're popping up. McHenry has one, Woodstock has one, and Huntley is going to have one they've announced. So how do we all work together to make sure that that's effective? And we have a number of external partners, including people from education, as well as naturally McHenry County is going to attend those, and we've got the Small Business Development Center. So it's a really good collaborative effort to make sure that our ties with those municipalities remain strong.
And where's that first meeting?
That is going to occur at the recently ribbon-cut Catalyst campus in Woodstock.
I think the other, to kind of somewhat piggyback on what Mark just said, the board is dedicated to reimagining what the investment, not only by private business, but municipalities looks like, and what benefits they're getting or what uses they have pertaining to it. That the model that is currently in place hasn't changed since I've been involved, which is almost 15 years. So it's something that we feel as businesses are asked to contribute to the model, and municipalities are, it's really understanding better what the needs are and how we can meet those needs, and then subsequently the ask for what investment level they're at will correspond with those needs. So that's something that we're collectively all working on to try and make that more cohesive and ultimately help the businesses more. And the municipalities that are seeking the expertise and information that we can provide.
Yep, providing value to the different segments of our investor base is important. It's easily recognizable that there's a diverse need, right? Value from an organization like the Economic Development Corporation is different between a county government, between an individual municipality, between a private sector business, and between some of the other partners who are invested with us. And so determining how we can make equitable funding levels in the private investing side is a priority for us. And the board's been very collaborative to that end so far.
Are there any other questions? Brian, do you have something? Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. I apologize that I don't have the, apparently the document in front of me that you all are actually discussing, but I do have some basic questions, Mark, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First off, I'd like to delve into the personnel situation just a little bit more. So right now you have yourself and James?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and so you have no other personnel at the moment, correct?
We have a two-man shop, yep.
All right, and I have to ask you, what is the vision of this? I mean, is there a vision to bring in another full-time person, another part-time person? What is it that you're looking to do in the future to continue to move things forward in a positive, I guess, improved level?
Yeah, in an ideal situation for fiscal year 2025, we would look at bringing in a part-time individual just for cost efficiency, and what that person's role would be outreach director, and you know what their position entails would be that connectivity with the investors, arranging, invoicing, aligning marketing so that it is targeted to the right groups of individuals. That's a position that I am confident is necessary in the MCEDC, and I'd like to see that grow into a full-time position in the long term.
And so, thank you for that segue. Growing into a full-time position in the long term, what do you project in your vision that might be? 2 years?
Yeah, I would say realistically that would probably be a 2026 thing based off of what I've projected. Obviously, it's contingent upon investment levels and how well we execute on some of our initiatives to bring in revenue, but it's got to be sustainable. I mean, we can't be in a situation where payroll is compromised. So and that's something I bring with me from small business. I've had those sleepless Thursday nights before Friday payroll, and that's not something I ever intend to go back to doing again.
Thank you, I appreciate it. The document then that I have before me identifies section 4 of the budget, and it's talking about the county's contribution. And it identifies, the next 4 years, if you will, here. And it's my understanding then from what I heard in the commentary that you're looking at this coming fiscal year at an additional contribution of $50,000 above and beyond what the county has done in the past, which is $160,000. So you're looking at $175,000 for this coming fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's what was discussed initially, and I apologize that I didn't get that emailed out. What I've kind of laid out there is intervals of $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to see how we would use the dollars. Ultimately, the amount is the choice of the committee, and the way that we measure ourselves against that is the choice of the committee as well.
All right. One of the goals that you had identified, and I think it's an admirable goal, is to increase participation on behalf of businesses. One of the things I think the challenge with is the fact that anytime government becomes involved, whether it's the county government, local municipal governments, start working in these areas, there's a tendency for individuals, private individuals or businesses to say, well, government's taking care of that. We don't have to worry about that. And so there's kind of a negative incentive, if you will, for businesses to become involved. what do you think is the best way to approach encouraging businesses when government is already doing as much as they are?
Yeah, that's an absolutely correct point. And the way that I look at that perspective, or the perspective that I look at that from, is a both and perspective. I mean, the government is involved at every level when it comes to private sector. And the public-private partnership terminology that we use, we wear that proudly because we can act as the conduit between the county government and the private sector, right? We can act as a go-between, as a neutral and agile partner to both parties. Now, there's a lot of things that are set up as that to begin with, but we are just another arrow in the quiver, if you will, to strengthen that connection. By and large, I do think that private sector is in a position where they would gladly receive economic benefit from the government, and so it's up to us as the EDC to demonstrate how that works from the government side, and simultaneously it's our role to take what private sector is saying, what they're seeing in our economic environment, and bring that to the government and say, here's how this would impact what the private sector wants, if that makes sense.
So are you establishing then kind of goals, if you will, points whereby public contributions might be equated on a percentage basis with the government contribution?
I would love to see that in the long run. A 50-50 government reliance ratio is ideal, but there would be a lot of work to do to get there, right? I mean, that would be more than doubling or almost doubling our current private investment. And over the years, private investment and the value has changed for economic development organizations nationwide, right? The value of them has changed with the advent of accessibility for things. So once again, that goes back to that demonstration of value. We've got to demonstrate what our value is. So I don't want to say that within the next 3 years we've projected that to be equitable, but that certainly is a goal.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Terry?
I want to thank you, Member Sager. You were going exactly where my mind was going. When you look back over the last couple of decades, I do not know this for a fact. I would be very interested, and you probably may know, but the funding came from large locally owned companies for the most part. And then there were small businesses that then probably constituted a significantly smaller portion. Many of those companies are now part of national or international conglomerates and have very little interest in the economic development locally of McHenry County. Many have been absorbed and shut down. We've talked about that with the project with the ARPA funds, about what's happening with the aging out. And I mean, just like by the week or by the month, we have more companies transitioning to venture capitalists.
Yeah.
So then, you look at this, and being involved in this for a couple of decades, I don't think it was ever the intent that the bulk of the funding came from government entities, that it was meant to truly be a private-public partnership, collaboration. And that is the problem that I see right now, because when you look at the nature of the members, and maybe there are still a significant number that can carry the bulk of that, but they're being crushed under the burden of taxation right now. The federal, state, local property taxes, it just continues. We've got, we're living in basically a communist economy in Illinois. And so I'm very sensitive to the percentage of burden on the revenue, and that has to be more in alignment. So there would have to be a commitment from MCEDC that they're going to increase that funding and then have a plan for how that would happen to, at the very least, be a 50-50 split, if not more of a 60-40 split. So that's just, and I think that's a little bit of where you were going, Brian, but you're much more eloquent to the point. So, but that's what my immediate concern was when I look at this, the optics of anybody looking at this.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a well-taken point. You address both the necessity for the organization to take responsibility and develop private sector funding, and you also address the challenge of seeking additional private sector funding, right? You know, every year there are more reasons why, or more reasons to invest in something rather than your local economic development organizations, and that is exactly why it is so important that we consistently demonstrate value to our private investors. As I've said, what that looks like is diverse across the investor base. It starts with connectivity, though. It starts with knowing that the organization has their best interest in mind. And you know, it starts with in bits and pieces. You brought up the Strong Transitions program. Not only is that a program that I think will provide net good in our community and hopefully act as a fence towards some of that, towards some of the private investment from other areas, but I also see that as an indication of the MCEDC saying to our private sector, hey, we're here for you. We know that these are challenging times, especially for businesses who are in transition or will be in transitions within the next 10 years. We are committed to retaining businesses in McHenry County. You know, also the onus is on us for attraction of new businesses externally, right? When we bring in businesses from outside of the community, that is an excellent opportunity to check in with them 3 months after they've got set up. Hey, you know, here, would you consider becoming an investor in the MCEDC? So our mission of attract, expand, retain ties into that value proposition that we need to deliver to businesses, to the private sector more effectively.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Go ahead, Larry.
Well, on that private investment question, as I see you had it, is that an estimate, 70,000?
70,000 is, as of last week, we are at 72,000 for 2024. So the original budgeted amount for fiscal year 2024 was 47,635. And as of last week, we're at 72,000. So 70,000 is a conservative estimate. I hope to develop that further by engaging in some of those initiatives, by inspiring collaboration at opportunities such as the annual dinner, November 13th, if anybody's interested in tickets, and continuing that process of being able to deliver on value. You know, I tend to try to view this as a economic flywheel. Each initiative that we undertake is contributory to the inertia of developing investment and giving back to the community.
So currently it's 72,000?
That's right.
Okay. But you want to...
I've only estimated 70,000 just because it's a round number.
Yeah. And why was it budgeted at 47 and 24 then?
Because that was reflective of what it had been in the year prior.
I'm confused. You expected to...
Well, so, okay, so when we were, as the board, when we were budgeting, we budgeted based on what we believed the actual money that would be coming in so that we would create a true budget. And when we looked at the number of investors that were investing, that number, which used to be in the hundreds, had gotten down to 35 roughly, something like that.
38 was the number I remember, yeah.
38. So the amount of money that was coming in from those, we budgeted based on what we believed was happening. Since we hired Mark as the executive director, one of the tasks that we have put with him is to go back and retouch those businesses that used to be investors, and that has yielded a lot, basically. So, and again, it was that outreach, which was not a focus of the prior individual, but needed to be and wasn't. So it was a situation where there was a lot of things that were going on that Mark has taken the task of fixing. And that's why I think in future budget years, the 70,000 is light, because I think that is still a major focus of not only the board, but of Mark to make those touches. And again, what I talked about earlier, the value proposition to businesses. You have to be, you walk into a business and say, hey, we'd like you to invest in MCEDC. First question a business owner or someone's gonna ask is, what the hell do I get out of this? And if the answer is, well, you get a lot of goodwill and you get a lot of good feelings, that's not gonna sell in the world. So it has to be tangible things that a business can say, oh, I need that, I want that, and I'm willing to put money to get that.
Do you have an estimate I'm sorry, an estimate that's gonna go to at some point? Can you increase that 10%, 20%?
From what?
From the 70?
Oh, I would expect we should be able to, and I'm putting pressure on you, Mark, here.
Sorry,
I'm not even looking at you, but I'm putting pressure on you. I mean, I think we should be able to grow that by probably 15,000 a year, pretty easily.
Okay.
And if Mark is given the tools to be able to hire a third person and given the tools to be able to function at a higher capacity than he is right now, I think that could go up even better. It's time, right? It's time, and with only 2 people in the office, and all the work that 2 people are being required to do, it's a struggle to do not only all the required things that MCEDC has to do, but being in charge of the enterprise zone now takes a lot of time, and yes, we're getting revenue from that also, but it's just a lot of time. I mean, I don't know how often do we get inquiries as to searches, and I mean, it's at least once a week.
Yeah,
so.
at least once a week, and it's in busier times, it's like 3 to 4 a week, and each one of those searches is about a 2 to 3 hour thing if we're just sending the searches out to our municipal partners, right? If we are actually responding to the RFI for the searches, a 5-hour job. So, each enterprise zone endeavor is about, like, if we have a enterprise zone request sent in, that's about 10 to 12 hours, right? So there's plenty to do. I am rarely bored, but we still go back to those priorities that are key, and one of the top priorities is demonstrating that value to our private sector investment base to increase that level of funding.
And we have had, like Terry pointed out, venture capital come in and purchase a lot of the larger companies that were large donors to MCEDC. I mean, we've had a couple of $10,000 a year donors that are no longer around because of buyouts.
Yeah, and it's not intimidating to us as an organization to go to that ownership if we can contact them and say, hey, you're part of the community. What would keep you from continuing the investment that the organization did in the past? However, just by the nature of private equity and what their ultimate goals are, it's a challenge for them to, that would be one of the areas that they would cut costs initially to provide value for their stakeholders and their investors.
Someone sitting in an office in Connecticut doesn't give a damn about McHenry County. I mean, the realistic side of it is.
All right, so I have 2 questions. One was, what is the sell that you give to companies to join, right? Because as Mike had said, when you go and say it's for goodwill, So what is the sell? What are you offering what are you offering the companies?
So we've got a couple of different, tactics or sell sheets to go into a specific organization, and it depends depending on the size of the organization, because again, diverse organizations require diverse value. But one of the things that we'll rattle off is the commitments that we currently have, the tie to the public sector, saying that we have access to your government representatives at the county level and the municipal level. Secondarily, we always discuss our commitment to workforce development, because that's on the top of everyone's every private sector business's mind right now, is where are our employees coming from. We collaborate with McHenry County Workforce Network. We sit on the workforce board. We've been involved for years, and an MCEDC was part of the initiation, and I've been a member for 5 years of the Manufacturing Pathways Consortium, and we're deeply involved in that on a monthly basis. And so we demonstrate our commitment to making sure that they have trained employees. If we're going to a particular area, if we have an idea of what their goals are, if there's a targeted expansion, we'll bring what economic incentives are available and discuss that. But a lot of times, Teresa, what it comes down to is being someone that can listen to them and say, that's enough about me. What are your needs, right? What do you want to see? I'm new here. So tell me what the value of the MCEDC ought to be to you, and that's typically how I'm starting the conversation.
Another one. So I see we have 10 of our municipalities. Do the municipalities have to put in some membership fee to be part of your consortium, or how are you?
Part of the EDGE group?
Well, so when I look on the website, because I was like, one of your things is you're going to put more money into the website. So it's like, well, how bad is the website, right?
Don't say it on the public forum. Don't share your opinion on the public forum.
That's fine. I mean, I'm like, this is fine. But so I'm like, well, you have 10, and these are 10 big ones in the county. But in my mind, we have some municipalities that really need some assistance. And how would they get themselves involved?
Right.
In being part of this?
It's not it's not a requirement that the municipality is an investor for us to work with them, right? If there's an opportunity in a specific municipality that doesn't have their own economic development coordinator, right? Maybe there's a village board and a village president. That's honestly a priority for us to work with them because they're the ones that need our help, the ones that have two economic development coordinators, a very active chamber. They need our help less. They need us as a support system and a convener to say, hey, let's all get together in a room. But those municipalities that don't have those resources, that's who needs us the most. So it isn't a pay-to-play thing, and we want everybody at the table. Of course, when, in the long run, when those municipalities experience economic growth, of course we'll be there saying, hey, this would be a great opportunity for you to become a MCEDC investor because of what we've been able to achieve working together. But I can think of a number of municipalities that I'm working with currently on specific initiatives that don't have that economic development resource. I don't want to stand in anybody's way or meddle in things that robust municipalities are doing. But oftentimes it's the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of your investment comes from 20% of of the investment base. So
I could help on that one. I mean, in the 3 months Mark's been in his role,
right.
3.5 now, he's probably spent more time with the city of Marengo than any community. Marengo's not an investor in my knowledge.
they are. They are.
You spend a lot of time with those guys. The other side is huge there, right?
Yeah, they have an incredible asset. They have an underdeveloped but very promising asset in the 23 and 90 corridor, and that's where we ought to be focusing our efforts and resources and making those connections, right? If they don't know about economic incentives, if they don't know about potential attraction opportunities, then that is antithetical to what we are supposed to do here. A rising tide brings up all ships. And I'm confident that if we had those other municipalities at the table, the ones that you see on there that are investors that may be at a higher investment level, they'd say the same thing. They don't want me saying, all right, guys, this is how we're gonna do it in your city, right? They want me as a partner and say, you know, to be able to be there with the county. But those without those resources, that's where it's important and critical for us to provide them.
Anything else? Any other questions? Brian, you still got your hand up, or?
Yes, yeah, I ask a couple more questions if I can. It's my understanding that what we are doing in the course of our discussion right now is to try to quote unquote kind of fill in the blank as we look to the next 4-year funding by the county. Is that the case?
Yes.
All right, then I would ask first, can you tell me the level of funding that we've had over the past 4 years?
160,000.
So it has been stable at 160,000 over the last 4 years. Is that correct?
And prior to that, it was 165,000.
66.
66.
It was 166 for 4 years, and then it dropped to 160 for 4 years.
All right. Well, this is going to sound a little bit bizarre, I guess, but I do believe that investing in economic development is an essential aspect of moving the larger communities, the larger county, the larger economic status forward. And I do think that we have to invest in that. And so I am willing to invest in that and to increase investment at this stage of the game. The reason I say that is because Mark is new. I think we have a new opportunity here. I frankly individually believe strongly in Mark's capacity to do that. I would reiterate what he just said. I mean, I think a lot of work has already been done in a short period of time, and I would like to see him well positioned, I think, to move things forward in even more positive direction. And I think we need to be part of making that happen. I also believe that we need to have a strong, and I mean absolutely strong, effort in terms of getting businesses and other municipal governments to become a part of this in a greater extent. So I really want to see progress in that regard. But bottom line, I think that we should agree to $175,000 right now for this coming fiscal year. And then in my mind, I would like to see that increase. And I'm going to throw figures out here now, but people are going to debate this, and that's fine. But I would like to see a 3% increase for the next 3 years after that, so that we can move things forward. Then I believe we've got to kind of sit back and say, all right, is it time for us to modify our level of contribution, because as a result of our commitment and our investment, then others are starting to move forward and assume some responsibility in this as well. So if I kind of projected that out, and anybody can check the math here, but if we were to start out at 175 this year, then go to a 3% increase over the next 3 years, it'd be 180,250 in the subsequent year, 185,659, found that in the last year, 191,227. For a total increase over this period of time then of 19.52%. But again, I think that all of that is still subject to the budget review process. And equally, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are reviewing the progress in bringing additional membership, additional contribution on behalf of municipal governments as well as private business. So that's just a position I put on the table at the moment. Thank you.
Other members have, go ahead.
So I have another question before I make a comment. Are there grant opportunities out there for EDCs?
Yes, and the majority of them are performative in the sense that there are few grant opportunities that would be available that said, here you go, this just goes into your general fund and use it as you please. Don't take this as a desire for me not to pursue any economic incentives and available grants from DCEO or the Economic Development Association, National Economic Development Development Association, they typically have a lot of work associated with them. Not unlike the ARPA funds, where it's like, yeah, you got to do this and show us what you do, and it's got to be very specific. You can't say, hey, we just need a couple extra bucks to get to that. End. So when I was at the Illinois Small Business Development Center, that is an entirely grant-funded position with a significant match, but it's all grant-funded. And I was just telling the person who recently got hired there, I said, yeah, about 50% of your job is advising small businesses, and then 50% is managing that grant program. So it's a significant effort, and I'm a big believer in not pursuing grants unless you have an ongoing initiative that it could fall in line with, right? So if something came through that could complement our efforts in, say the Strong Transitions Program, say, hey, we could see this program continue on without private investment for another 10 years, that's an absolute win. But if it's something that's like, hey, you got to change the face of your organization to do this, then it definitely requires further discussion.
A lot of times when you get a grant, showing the deliverables are almost another part-time job, so.
Absolutely.
I understand that.
Yep.
I want to comment on what Brian said. I think it's important that we invest in the EDC and increase, and say, since we decreased 4 years ago, I know businesses are looking out here to invest in here. I think it's important that we show them that we're interested in them coming out here and the benefit of coming out here, because it not only does it benefit the business, but it also benefits the residents, the community, the government, and the business. So, and it could ultimately decrease property taxes because we're spreading out the tax base. So I definitely am good with the $175,000. I'm a little reluctant with the continuous 3%, just because we never know what's going to happen. I think maybe next year we'll want more. Maybe we won't have funding, especially because this funding's coming out of our Economic Development Fund. So I agree with Brian about the $175,000.
Kurt?
So I want my statement to be considered in the fact that I am a strong supporter of the MCEDC. I've been a member from the time that I opened my business. I've been an investor. I've been a sponsor. I served on the board 6 years, and very much respect the organization and see the significance of its input. When I look at this budget, having 2/3 of it supported by government money in one form or the other, tax dollars, with 1/3 being supported by private investment, it's not what had been envisioned as a collaboration. I would be more inclined to look at splitting the difference and say, let's put it at 167, and then with a goal to increase, to work toward over the next 4 years of 50-50, where we were getting 50% from private investors, and then maintain the 167. That would give a big incentive to the organization, and as you're developing your message and what you're doing. And I know years ago, there were very clear things that were big issues in the county, and MCEDC moved those balls forward where they're, those are not the issues. Now we have really great opportunities, not just like, how do you drive to work, kind of things. So I would propose 167 with a request from MCEDC to increase the private sector contribution and sponsorships to 167 and go about it that way so that it could be on an even footing. I personally, I think that I'm not alone in no business owner in McHenry County, even though we want the economic growth, even though we know that it does benefit, is looking for one more government entity on our tax bill to support. And it kind of is counterintuitive to what the original intent was of the organization. So that's what would be my perspective.
Okay.
Are we going to discuss this contract, or are we going to have the resolution, a motion for the resolution, and then discuss it more?
Well, so I just wanted to get all the questions and of course, you know, talk about it and then we can, you know, I think it would be easiest to settle on a number and then make a motion and insert that number into the resolution, then have a motion and then try and amend the motion, amend personally.
And that's fine, I can give my opinion anytime. If Teresa wants to go first, that's fine too.
Well, so I'm thinking about how do we meld the ideas being presented by our colleagues here, right? And so Brian talked about starting with an amount and going up. Terry would like to start with a lower amount, right? And that my wondering is, and I'm not sure where I want to go on this, but to the end that we want to encourage more private investment, perhaps the answer would be to start with an investment, a higher investment, and then instead of increasing the spreads, just but decreasing to try to have private investment take over the loss. Because right now you need an influx, right, of funding to be able to attract more businesses and perhaps more municipalities to being involved, right? So that takes investment. That I agree with Kelly that when MCEDC is successful, we would see the taxes become lower for our residents as businesses flourish and therefore taking over some of the tax burden, right? So I'm not really sure. At this very second, I'm not sure which way I'm going because I can see some merit to all the suggestions, but I'm wondering if maybe the answer is to go the opposite of Brian's suggestion and start with a higher number and let it decrease with the hopes that private investment would pick up that loss.
Okay.
Me?
Yeah.
I agree with Terry at the 167. I'm not in favor of an automatic increase in any way, and if that's in part of it, I will not vote for it. And I think it's disingenuous to have it for 4 years, even though we can review it every year. I think it should be for 2 years max. And I think that's pretty much where I'm at.
Okay. Brian, you got your hand up again?
Yeah, I want to reiterate that able to get the conversation moving forward. You know, I do believe strongly that it's wonderful to start with 175,000. What we need to do, I think that the statement and our commitment to supporting and encouraging economic development within the community, because as was stated by back in Memphis, that when we support economic growth and development, that to reduce our reliance upon our taxes on residents and business. I think that's a really positive. You know, I'm good with just 175 right now for a couple of years, as Larry suggested, maybe, and then review things and go from there. So I don't have any strong commitment to an automatic increase or an automatic decrease. I think we kind of need to take a look at where we are in 75. So I'd be willing to support that for a treatment.
So based on what I'm hearing, would the committee be open to having be a 2-year contract instead of a 4-year contract and have it just be 175 both years? And then allow Mark time to be able to make the MCEDC a little bit different organization than what it is today and be able to come back. I mean, one of the things I warned Mark about is he's gonna have to spend a lot more time in front of the county board and not for any other reason than to talk about the things that are going on. I mean, as a county board, we need to be up on what's going on in the county as far as economic development and the partnerships that we have. And as we collaborate together more, he needs to have time to be able to, and whether he comes to this committee and we tell the rest of the board members, or whether he goes to a committee of the whole or a full board, it doesn't really matter, but somehow, some way, he has to have more contact with us to share things that are going on. And not just all the positives, it's not meant to be a fluff piece. He has to also share the concerns that he has, because, you know, as county board members, we have to be able to know about those concerns in order to be able to react to them. So what
I'll make a motion for a contract of $175,000 per year for 2 years. years.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Cheryl seconded.
Teresa?
A second, yes.
I mean, you're looking at something, I don't
And
know.
I was like, what is, Scott's showing us what's gonna happen to our fund.
Well, I can either whiteboard it or I had the notes on the model, which we'll show you in a little bit, but I thought that might be helpful in discussion, but I think you're already working.
Yeah.
Bring it home.
Okay.
Itching, aren't you?
Yeah, he's itching to whiteboard it. Okay.
Yeah,
So we have
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract, but have it be only a 2-year contract and be at 175 for both years.
So essentially, we're amending what we have in front of us here.
Correct. Well, she's making a motion. I mean, I don't need to amend it because she's making the motion, because it currently has a blank number there, so.
Okay.
So now is it discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will have to vote no on it because of the 175. I'm supportive of the 2 years, but just there's a lot going on in the economy in the county. And again, I love the organization. I don't love increasing the amount. It's only just 175.
Is there any other discussion? If not,
I'd just like to say that, and Terry, your presentation, and I appreciate and respect that. My point is that frankly, I don't see how it would be possible to increase the level of private investment and other investment on behalf of municipalities without some assistance of personnel. And so I just really firmly believe that they're going to have to go back to at least a part-time individual or a full-time individual to make things happen and move it forward. So that's the reason to have a slightly larger investment at this time, so we can ensure some stability in our capacity to be able to move forward. So that's what I'm considering. Thank you.
all right, any other discussion? All right.
May I read that?
Oh, yeah.
I just, Brian, I understand, I just don't think that we're talking about a difference of $8,000 a year. So that's not gonna cover a part-time person. It's not gonna get them there, so.
I mean, I was looking at this, just thinking, if it was 8,000 shorter, where are they cutting from? Probably a little bit from website, a little bit from advertising, right? Yeah, so.
It's a pretty lean budget, and you know, as Brian's demonstrated, we're not in a position to cut any of the personnel we have currently.
Right.
At the level they're at, and so it does come out of those things that add to our resources and capabilities. I mean, to Mike's point, I have a responsibility, that organization has a responsibility to come to the county board, whether it's this meeting or committee of the whole, and demonstrate how we're doing that. And in order to get accurate data from within our community, we've got to have those data resources. And that's one of those key areas that I would utilize additional funding in, is to increase our level of, to be specific, ESRI, so that we can have better understanding of how the money comes into McHenry County, where the money flows, you know, who is spending it, and you know, what portions go to what industries and things like that. And I think that's, you know, important data for us to be delivering to the county and us to have a strong understanding of.
I agree. The more we can do for economic development, reasonable economic development, of course, the more we can reduce taxes. I think that's important. So ultimately, we may be increasing this funding by 15%. It's coming out of a fund, not our general fund, but a specific economic development fund right now. But ultimately, that may help reduce taxes in the end.
Okay, anything else? All right, we'll go to vote then. Teresa?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Larry?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Terry?
No.
And myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
We're on to item 8.2. I don't know who's all coming down here, but. Is it okay if we kind of do this resolution the same way?
Sure.
So
Okay.
you don't need to present for this one.
I already have on the screen. Yeah, Jackie, thank you for coming up here. Okay.
We won't be able to send what's on your screen to the encoder unless you're plugged into this. Do you want this on the, want a direct feed to that?
Can Brian see it?
Brian can see it.
I think that's.
Okay.
Actually, could we plug it into there then? Just to make sure.
Although I remember yesterday's fiasco where you couldn't show us, show us the change in the model.
I know, and I'm so disappointed in that, because that was like
I know you were ready.
almost as good as
Really
having here at the meeting. So, all right, but I can run off this computer, so, okay. All right.
The screen's the same as what we have in front of us, though, right?
It is. In that case, if we want to talk about specific numbers, we can focus in on them, so we're all literally on the same page. For the record, Scott Hartman, I'm Deputy County Administrator of McHenry County, but for full disclosure, I also am Chair of Natural McHenry County's Finance and Audit Committee. As we mentioned at the last meeting, I indicated that I would be serving in this role for this presentation. So for purpose of disclosure, I want to make sure that the county is okay with me and the county administrator is okay with me maybe putting on a different hat this morning.
I don't see a hat, I just see hair. So there you go.
All right, and with me is Jackie Bergeron. She is the President and CEO of Natural McHenry County, joining me for this presentation. But I also want to introduce some members of our board. We have Eric Maramoto. He's with the Village of Cary. He's a new member of our board and on the Finance and Audit Committee. We have Brad Ball. He's with the Woodstock Chamber on the Finance and Audit Committee. Elizabeth Kessler, who is our President or Chairman of the National McHenry County Board and with the McHenry County Conservation District. And of course, Mark Picos is on our board as well. So
Everyone's got a lot of hats today, holy cow.
So give me the hat rack. Put that in the, could we put that in the agenda on the budget? So with that, I want to thank you so much for the committee and for the members of NMC coming out. Hopefully if you have questions that I can't answer, which probably a lot of them I can't, we have the people in the room that can. So with that underway, you spend a lot of time talking about economic development and the investment that the county makes into these organizations. And we want to make sure it's very clear that naturally McHenry County is indeed a pillar of McHenry County's economic development platform. The tourism-based economy is a lively, vibrant part of our economy. And I passed out to everybody, if you haven't seen a press release showing from a third party, not from us, of course, we would have different numbers because we think it was better than what it shows that the tourism-based economy in McHenry County generated $15.4 million in local taxes and over 2,200 jobs. When you think of return on investment, I think those are real numbers. And we would also point out there's a cascading effect to each one of those local tax dollars and each one of those jobs that are created into the community. So you can just see how profound the tourism-based economy is in McHenry County, how important it is to what the county does as a whole, but all of those businesses that this is their livelihood. And our job as Natural McHenry County is to be a destination marketing organization. We are out there, and when we say out there, we're saying 50 plus miles, telling people about the great things to do and see in McHenry County, because we want to bring those people from far away into here to enjoy what we get to enjoy every day. We may even take it for granted because it's here in our backyard. So if you haven't been out there visiting our farms and our conservation districts and all the great offerings, please do. I mean, you don't have to go too far to enjoy the rest of your summer here in McHenry County. But destination marketing organization, that's what we do. That's our purpose. That is our function. And I think it is really important too, not only for this organization, but also for the county to ensure McHenry County's name is out there. It's out there far. So with that, there is a value to what you do and what you provide to National McHenry County and to be a partner. I think, Kelly, you used the term investment early in this conversation, spot on, because you're making that investment into this, into ensuring this organization can do what it is good at doing, what it needs to do. But having said that, I just want to focus in on really what you'd asked for this morning, and that is to show kind of a 2-year pro forma of what the financial outlook for the organization is, and really, as you left it, what is the need? What is the gap we are trying to fill? And which is I would say, a bit of a challenge because, our crystal ball is only so good, trying to project what things are going to be in 2 years. It's a little bit challenging, but I think working with our Finance and Audit Committee, we really dug deep, and I think we made some really good, practical, realistic projections for you to consider and really help identify what that need is and where McHenry County will fit in and help us do what we need to do. So looking at the very first revenue line item is grant. That is the state grant. That's money that the state gives every year to the Convention and Visitor Bureaus. It's a formula grant, right? It's based on population. So all of our participating municipalities, including the county, submit a letter of support saying that NMC is our Convention and Visitors Bureau, and therefore that population now is factored into the formula, which really helps assess the funding.
And their sales tax and their occupancy tax, if
So-
you have it in the formula.
Okay, sales tax and occupancy tax in the formula as well. So it's formula based, but the challenge is we do not know year to year what that grant is going to be. It's been, right now for the current fiscal year, and just to note, when I say fiscal year, NMC is July 1 to June 30, so it's, it follows the state fiscal year. $331,000 was our grant. Last year was higher, so we actually saw a dip. Years it was much higher, and there were some years it was much lower. So it's really hard to predict, because that being our predominant funding source of that state grant, it's hard to predict what the next 2 years will hold, because like McHenry County, we're sometimes beholden to the whims of the state. There was a very dark period when we as a board had to make some difficult decisions because the state did not have a budget. And when the state didn't have a budget, all the state grants were on hold. So how do you operate an organization reliant on the state, this major state grant, without having that funding come in? So we had Jackie put together version after version of austerity budgets. So, okay, if the grant doesn't come in, we cut this. If grant doesn't, and it was challenging. If you remember that period when the state didn't have a budget, that directly impacted us. So the whim of the state and the financing and the policies and the political landscape really have an effect. For purposes of this projection, we thought it was reasonable to say, okay, we can predict, or hopefully we'll see some stability in that grant funding. So across the board, you see $330,000. Like I said, last year was higher, a little bit lower than this year, but we think that is probably a good practical starting point. Now, the grant funding covers a lot of the budget, but it's not across the board application to what we do. It's very limited on the areas in which that grant funding can be applied. So included in the spreadsheet, there's a column called grant eligibility, and it's, as Jackie put it, this grant was not designed to be simple. And it's really, I'm still trying to come to terms with this. Jackie will explain it to me all day, but it's really quirky because the grant money can be applied to some things, but it can't be applied to others. And it can be applied to some other things in a smaller proportion, and which is really hard to keep track. So it's not just an across the board, you get $330,000 and then anything else you get, you can run your organization. We have to be very mindful on how that money is applied because it has restrictions and it has requirements. So with that, one of the requirements is we have to have a 30% local match. That's today. 30% is, in some years we saw a 50% local match. Early on in the organization, it used to be 100% local match. So you could see how if we had $331,000 for a state grant, we'd have to come up with $331,000 in local match to fully utilize that. That changes, and in the next 2 years, I can't tell you what it's going to be. There's an indication that it may go up from 30% local match to 50%, which will put more pressure on those local dollars to be applied only to grant eligible functions. So other functions that aren't grant eligible, could not benefit from those local dollars. So I know that's a bit nebulous, and it's really hard to present, and I'm doing my best.
You're doing a really good job.
If I'm missing anything,
Jackie talk.
Yeah, it's a
15
challenge.
years of doing it, it's still hard to, for me to even get all the rules straight in my head, but no, that's a good.
Having set that table, we're going to try to do our best. The whole point is, even at the local match, there's still going to need more local monies just to run the organization, do some things we have to do, like the audit. You have to do the audit, but that's not eligible for grant funding. So we have to come up with 100% local money for that. So how do you come to terms with that? That aside, so the grant funding is a part of it, but we rely on other sources. Now, McHenry County is a significant investor. For purposes of this presentation, I'm showing you what a flat $100,000 for the next 2 years would look like. Our ask is going to be, and once again, I'm putting on NMC's hat, not the county hat, that be considered for an increase. Costs are going up. In order for us to do what we need to do is going up. This organization has grown, it's taken off, it's flying, it's soaring, and we've got good return on investment to show that that investment is worthwhile, and additional monies will help support that structure to do what actually Jackie and her team are so good at doing. So when you see $100,000, I would just want you to know that's only for purpose of illustration. That's not the ask. We would ask that additional be considered if the county can support that. So with that said, we have other sources of revenue that are key. We have municipal partners, and you talked a lot with MCEDC on their municipal partnership. We have a really good traction in our municipal community. A lot of the festivals and the events that they put on, they rely on NMC to help promote that. And we're not only promoting that within McHenry County, once again, our reach is a lot further. And the state grant requires any advertising for state dollars to be applied has to be over 50 miles away. So we can't just advertise right across the border. We've got advertising going in Milwaukee right now. And we've got different campaigns going in different areas to draw people down here. So that, when you think of value to our partners in terms of municipality, is having that reach of marketing, having that reach of advertising and awareness. So municipal partners, they're really going on strong. They've stepped up. They've recognized the value that this organization provides to what they need to do to support their economic development functions, to support their community. They see it, and that's the value we provide to them. One thing, of course, though, there's only so many municipalities in McHenry County, and they only have so much money, and this, of course, competes with all the other needs and asks that they have, and it only goes so far. So we know that's a finite amount. That amount's only going to get so big, and then it's going to be tapped out. But the other aspect is our partnership, and these are our businesses. These are, maybe a tourism-related business, maybe a brewery, something that's going to benefit from that additional draw and that awareness. And so we really want to step up our partnerships. We're doing good. NMC is known. The brand has taken off. That marketing is, people are starting to see the fruits of that labor. We're getting traction. But as some of those who know business, sometimes you got to make the investment in the business to promote it, make it further. This year, and just started in July, we added a new position, a new staff position, which is a destination engagement and program manager, specifically to help promote the partnerships, to get out there and sell NMC, what we do, the value we provide, and generate that private partnership into the organization, a private investment. So what you'll see is the partnership revenue growing. And we want to be reasonable, practical, and so we show growth in it because we know this position is going to do great. We got a great individual Jackie was able to find and bring onto our team, and so we see that as growing. So the question of how much government money is supporting this organization, take the state grant aside, we're sensitive to that, but we also want our business owners who are going to benefit directly from the advertising, the sales, from the draw that we're going to create. We want them to step up to the plate because they're going to spend money on marketing one way or the other as well. But we're saying, hey, we can do this for you. So if they could take part of their marketing budget, or maybe all of it, put it into McHenry County and get a much greater bang for the buck. That's the value we provide, and that's why I think we're going to generate more in our partnership. But once again, that's hard to predict. Sometimes times get tough. Business owners have to make difficult decisions. But we wanted to show, we see growth. We see growth in it. I don't know what it's going to be in 2 years. I would hope it'd be a lot higher. But we want to be reasonable and practical. And as you know me working with me, I tend to be pretty fiscally conservative when I present you numbers. I want to give you good numbers, so I want you to make good decisions off the information I provide you. I didn't want to undershoot it because we do know it's going to grow. But we want that to take off. We see that to be a key sustainable part of our revenue. It's important to note that in the contract that you're talking about, in the resolution, There is actually a caveat that says only a percentage of the county's funding, or the county's only going to proportionally fund a certain amount of this organization. And that data point is the county will support no more than 76% of the full local contribution. So in other words, if we put $100,000 in, or $100,000 in, so the county's going to need, we need to have, what would that be? We need to have $76,000 more in partnerships, whether municipal or private revenue. Based on what we have in the budget this year and what we're projecting, I want to tell you that NMC greatly exceeds that threshold. In fact, the gray line, which I'm showing you here, that is that threshold. That is that parameter that says we are less, or we are greater than that 76%. Or I'm sorry, the county is less than that 76% threshold, well less than. And the whole point was to be performance-based, to ensure that NMC is out there generating partnerships, generating businesses to want to invest, municipalities to want to come on board. Been very successful over the years, and we see that continuing, but it's going to reach a point. So I think that's everything with the revenues. But when everything is rolled up, this final line is really what we want to focus in on through the bulk of this discussion. That is actually the need. Based on what we predict and project to do what NMC needs to do and what it has to do in order to take advantage of the grant funding, this is really the reserves as needed. So we're tapping into the reserves. As you know, reserves deplete if you don't replenish them. This is not a sustainable model, and this is where the county's investment becomes very critical to help to alleviate that pressure. So, so with that, I want to just say, is there anything further on revenues that I missed that we want to talk about?
No, I think you've hit everything that's in my head is coming out Scott's mouth, so he's doing a great job.
So Mark did it wasn't a shameless plug. It was a great plug for the dinner coming up, the MCEDC dinner. Naturally, McHenry County does a dinner as well. We see that growing, and we see that actually potentially being a small source of revenue. That's reflected in here. It's not intended to be a moneymaker. It's intended to build those partnerships and build those synergies between businesses, where two businesses on the set of tables, oh, you do this, I do this, let's work together and do something greater. And that's really how those partnerships benefit. So, but you know what, we see that gaining some steam, and we're really excited about that dinner as it occurs every year. It's going to get better and bigger and stronger and just much more fun. So with that, getting into our expenditures, we debated on whether or not we just give you a rolled up budget or we give you kind of a more or less a line item budget. And though in this committee, I think you probably want to see the detail. You want to understand where those numbers come from. So we wanted to show you, we want to not hide anything. This is what it is. This is our budget. Administration, obviously you have to run this organization. There's a cost to that. As I mentioned before, the grant funding is limited in what it can be applied to. Administration that's not greatly supported by the grant funding. They want the grant dollars, they being the state, to go to the advertising, to go to marketing, not to the administration. So we need to come up with our local shares, the county's investment, the partner investment, to help support the organization. So a lot of this is, and as you know me on this, on the board, and my committee and the NMC board will tell you, I'm kind of the fiscal hawk. I challenge Jackie on what about this expenditure? Where did this come from? How do you get? My job is on that board as the county representative to ensure that the county investment is being protected. They can all attest that I do that job. So we try to keep these numbers tight. We don't want to overspend. And you can see that we're trying to keep them modest. There are costs that are going to increase. We can't help that. We need to account for that. We need to plan for that. So our administration budget, it's there, but a lot of this money, once again, this has to come out of our local matches, whether it's the county or our partnership investment. Equipment and supplies. This is another one. We buy a computer. That has to come out of just pure local money. There's not a grant dollar that can be attributed to a computer. We just brought in a new staff. That staff needs a computer. That had to come out of our local funding. then we get into our marketing and advertising. This is really where the state wants those dollars to be, and this is the value that we provide to all of our partners and to the county. It's right here. This is what we do. This is the essence of what we do. We want to build this, and we'd love this number to be a lot higher, but it's only a function to what the budget can support, what the grant funding will support, what our investments will support. But if it doesn't grow, it's going to die. So that's the thing. So investment into this, advertising costs money, advertising increases. There's competition out there, so we want to make sure we have the biggest splash that we can do. When you look at different things, advertising, these could be our social media posts, these could be our, what's it called in Milwaukee? Cardvertise, right? Cardvertise.
Did that for
very
12 weeks.
creative approaches, things that you wouldn't otherwise see. But when you see, say, if you go to downtown Chicago, there was NMC advertising there for a while. So you may just in obscure places see NMC, National McHenry County, and like, wow, well, why is that there? It's there because it's a very thoughtful approach to where we want to make our investment. When I reported to this committee with the monthly reports, I often noted that the NMC used a service that collected data from zip codes. So if you go to a festival, there are sources out there tracking you, and if your zip code is this and you're here, well, we can compile that data and know, okay, wait a minute, we're getting people from this area. Let's put money into marketing into this area. So these are some of the thoughtful approaches that we do to advertising, to marketing, to ensure that that money is going to where it needs to go. Jackie and her team, they keep up on this. They keep up on different trends, on different approaches. They go to a lot of conferences just to learn how to do this better. And I think that the return on investment we started off with shows you that they're doing a really good job. We got to keep up on it, though. We can't let off the gas, because what you do, people are going to hear about another place and they're going to want to go there and not here. So the other, a big cost center in multiple ways is this wonderful publication right here. And you can say, well, wait a minute, we live in a technical age, a digital age. Who would want this? Well, what we'll tell you is this still gains a lot of traction. In fact, what Daniel Thomas, the Deputy Director of the Illinois Office of Tourism, said, because what was his word? I'm sorry. The value of print is going up. So people want this. And we've even had discussions, do we continue this? Because it takes a lot to produce this. And you can do this a lot cheaply digitally, but people want this. And if you don't have a copy of this, I encourage you to get one. I'm sure you did. If you misplaced it or want others, we can get you more copies.
They're at the front.
They're up at the front. But please, look at this document. This is the essence of what we do right here. And all these businesses, all the partners are getting the value of this. Wherever this goes into somebody else's hands, they get to see it, they get to hold it, and they say, wow, this is a really attractive publication, and they want to leaf through it. And what's the value of this? Well, we see that, but that value costs money, and we want to continue that. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because some people say, print's obsolete, it's a dinosaur. We're going to say no, not in what we do. It is as important as our digital advertising. So one of the things that, as I reported, I believe at the last meeting, was NMC is going to be losing its home in March. The Huntley office is going to be repurposed. I'm getting the hook here. And we don't know where we're going to go yet. We've got a line on a few other places, but the challenge is we don't know what rent's going to be. So we had to put in a variable for rent. One of the places we're looking at is going to expect a little bit more of a front facing, so we're going to have to staff that office and short staff. So that may require additional amount of hours in our part-time staff that we use to ensure we got presence. That's all to be worked out. We try to build it into this budget to the extent we can. But with that, then we get into our personnel. As I mentioned, we added the new staff. That's to be honest, that's why you see us going into our reserves, because we made a strategic decision to say it's that important to build our partnership. We need to invest in staff that can be focused and dedicated to that purpose, to allow Christine, who focuses on marketing, to do what she does, to let Jackie lead this organization and establish a vision and say what we're going to do. And now we got the pieces in place. But staffing is a big component. We added staff. We had a decision. We had a discussion on what it's going to do to our fund balance, but it was that strategic and that important, we said, we got to do it. Because if we don't make that investment, we're going to start lagging behind. And we're going to lose all the momentum we had. So with that, I asked my committee, I asked Jackie, is there anything that, I know Elizabeth, is there anything that I missed? Any key point that we have to hit? He's giving me the hope, he's not giving anybody else the hope.
I just wanted, I mean, phenomenal recap of everything, very accurate to exactly what I would want to portray to all of you. First and foremost, our appreciation to the county for the investment they've made in us since the beginning, because we've grown. I've been with the organization 15 years this month, and where we were when I came in and where we are now, even where we are in the last 4 years, is phenomenal. So kudos to the county for investing and finding the value in tourism. And I just want to add that one little thing when we're talking about that advertising number. That's where he was talking about. That's what the essence of it. That's where the magic is. That's where we continue to promote the brand and the county and naturally McHenry County out to the world. And for us, it's more 3 and 4 hour radius for right now. The data that's provided by the state in this press release from the tourism economics, they've also done studies and they've determined that there's at least a $6 for every dollar invested in advertising return on investment. And at this point, nationally, they've not found a model where it's hit a point where that investment is less. Even in Michigan, where you get $30 million invested in tourism, there's still at least a $6 or more return on that investment. So there hasn't been a break-even point hit yet. So I just wanted to point out that the investment and the return on investment is there, according to other outside sources that do that dialing down of the data and really looking at it. So the investment you've been making has a return, and it will continue to have a return, even if it goes into an increase for us for the future.
Thank you.
Committee questions?
Just a technicality maybe, but when I read the contract, it says 74%, not 76%.
My apologies.
Unless I'm looking at something, I'm not missing a spot, am I?
Nope, so it is.
You're missing 2%.
I know it's just a technicality, but I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right stuff.
Well, that'd be a disappointing error on my part. I could miss details like that, but okay, 74%.
Okay.
It is 76 or 74?
So
74%.
let me list find it. It's the contract.
Section 4 budget.
Section 4 budget, yeah. 74% of the Bureau's received revenue.
Well, I mean, on your little sheet here, it says it has to be less than 75. So you didn't necessarily mess it up.
So
Less than.
Oh, somebody did say 76.
less than 76 on the
It used to
sheet,
be
and that should be 74.
Got it.
So,
We're all good.
yeah, but it's
Okay.
still
It's fine, yeah.
well within the threshold.
Yeah.
Great. No, but that's all good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Other questions? Yes.
So a few here. Thank you for the thorough presentation. I've seen what you guys have done in the past 4 years, and it's amazing. So how many municipalities are not investors?
Are not. We have 30 municipalities roughly, and we have 7 that are investors. At this point, we have about, I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we've been in talks with very much over the last couple of years, and we're starting to see some movement and some interest on that. It's just getting into the right budget cycle. So I think we'll see that increase, especially with our destination engagement manager. As the years go on, we'll see more investment there. Okay. But we've got, in the last year, we've had 2 new municipalities come on, and we've had 2 of our municipalities almost double their investment.
Okay. All right. You were talking about you guys are going into your reserves. How many months of reserves do you have?
Our reserves are probably very close to being able to keep our organization going to dissolve it if we had to for about 9 months, I would say. We're at about 150,000 in our reserves.
Because like we have 5 months, that's our requirement, is 5 months reserves. So you guys are past that, so it's okay that you're dipping into your reserves for now.
For now.
For now, but as this is shown, it'll deplete. In fact, just across the board, that's 147,000 is shown if everything is equal. But as we know, I mean, it's 7 months versus 5 months. It's not a
Right.
It's a very thin margin between the two.
All right. So, the MCDC is now using the county payroll. would you guys, is that something you have talked about? And if you did, would it cut your payroll cost? Because I see that there's, you know, $2,000, $2,500 for processing. Is that something you've thought about?
We've not talked about it as a board. That's something obviously that came up new. I'll tell you what the organization benefits from is we have great staff without much investment in the benefits. And that's a challenge when you're recruiting to not be able to offer a robust benefit package. If we remove them under the county, and it's something we can certainly talk about, if the county would be willing to do that, we'd have to look at the cost because the county's benefits that would automatically be applied would probably outpace what we're currently paying.
And we need to also see how it would impact the grant. So I would need to double check that if it had to be done in a way, because if it were even construed as being part of the county in any way, we are not eligible for that grant. So I would just have to be careful about
Makes
that.
sense.
We just have to look into that.
Trying to look at, you know.
It's the discussion we could have, but those are the things we have to.
Right, okay. And the last thing is you were talking about that data collection software. Do you still use it?
We actually have gone this year to the state. Daniel Thomas is the director of tourism, he's new, and he's done a statewide listening tour, and all of the communities want data, and some of them are really small, CVBs just can't afford it. So he has actually worked with a state contract with Arrivalist to provide data for free to all of the convention bureaus that are certified. It's a very dialed down free. If you want to get as detailed as we used to be, we have to have that really expensive contract with Datify, but we as a board decided let's pull that down since we have the free access now and see if that's enough for us and to get what we need, which is big picture trends of how visitors are moving around our county. So we have gone away from that contract so that we were able to hire a person, which we felt was more important, but we still have access to some data that's provided for free from the state.
That's what I was thinking, I remembered. So, okay, that's all my questions for now, thanks.
Anyone, I can't see Brian if he has any questions or not, but.
Let me stop sharing.
Yes, please.
Okay. Hey, now I can see you got your hand up, okay.
All right, thank you. First off, I just want to say thank you for the thorough report. Secondly, sincere commendation to Jackie, the entire board. I think you've done an excellent job of forwarding National McHenry, and I think that we've had a lot of very, very to the efforts. Also grateful for the recent dinner that had the chance to participate in, and so I want to commend one and all. I think it's great. My question really boils down to, obviously, you're before the Finance and Audit Committee for a request. What is the request that you're forwarding?
Or just don't want to be too presumptuous by looking at the reserves, what would be sustainable, something at the level of $125,000 would be ideal. Of course, more, but we understand too that the county's limited in what it wants to do and the investment that it can make. But if you have to ask us to give you a number, it'll be a number.
Thank you. The committee just had a lot prior to the d.b.a. And our hopes, our expectations in that regard. So I would suggest that we stick with the same approach that we've taken, a little bigger agreement, and I think it's a matter of coming up with the dollars. My recommendation point is $110,000 for the next few years, but certainly that's just a starting point for discussion. Thank you.
Larry, do you want to talk?
Could I ask Brian a question?
Sure.
Brian,
Yes.
you were breaking up a little bit. Could you repeat what your suggestion is, please?
Sure. Based upon what we just started the MC and the two contracts, just kind of following through with that line, as a point of starting the conversation, I would say $110,000 for the next 2 years.
What was the year?
He said $110,000 for the next 2 years.
2 years, okay.
So basically, we did a 10% increase on MCEDC, so you're talking about a 10% increase on National McHenry County.
That's exactly right.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay.
I'll just thank you for putting this together, and I should have said thank you to Mark for the budget too, when we were going through all that.
Hey, he's still here, you can say.
Well, I know, I sort of was the one that instigated that we needed to look at this stuff, so I thought I should say thank you for being so thorough on it.
Go ahead.
So, to make up the rest of the loss of the reserves, do you anticipate being able to get more municipalities? Is there a varying degree of how much they contribute, or do you have a set amount?
There is a varying degree of what they contribute, because obviously Crystal Lake's gonna have, and McHenry and Woodstock are gonna be able to do more than like your Marengo, Lake in the Hills, and Spring Grove. So we work with them on varying levels. You know, I would think that we could see over the next 2 years, bringing in most of the ones I mentioned that we need to bring in, you know, as we move forward. But it's really, I mean, I've been having conversations with Marengo for 3 years. I've been having conversations with Algonquin for like 2.5. So it's you know, slow moving. But I think as we move in with this next, the Destination Engagement Manager, and as naturally McHenry County and the brand of NMC and the MCH is taking hold and becoming even more prevalent, thanks to our organization and the county government with all of your amazing branding out there that matches with ours. I think we'll see more of that buy-in as we go into the future, as well as partnerships. I expect those to increase quite a bit. The partnerships we've had in the past with a 2-person staff in the past couple of years have come to us. We haven't had a lot of time to do that outreach because Christine is fulfilling her promises to her partners by doing all the marketing and advertising, and she does a phenomenal job at that. Having that additional person to actually go out and tell the organizations that don't know about us is gonna see an increase there, so.
In those municipalities that have a hotel, motel, you get hotel motel tax. And that revenue stream can be used to offset their partnership with Natchez McHenry County. If a municipality does not have a hotel or motel, their partnership is coming out of other sources.
So what you would see that the gap would be coming from from
municipal private partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry?
Well, I have 2 questions, a little bit far apart. In the reserves, you're calculating the interest revenue in the reserve?
There is. It's on the sheet is $2,500 per year for interest.
That's on the sheet, the second,
Yep,
the second
second line.
line.
Oh, got it, thank you, 2,500. And what's the balance of the reserve?
We're right around 150, give or take.
Okay, so that's low. 2.5% or less is low right now. I mean, you can get 4.5 in a conservative investment.
I know that's something on the Finance Audit Committee's
That's
plan for this year, is to look at other ways to invest that reserves to find a higher
We
return
have
on
a
it.
treasurer that can really.
Yeah, so it's something that we're definitely,
Yeah.
it's a conversation we've had and we'll continue to look into.
But right now, I mean, as we see, we're going to have to stay liquid because we are going to be using our
Oh, no,
reserves
I'm
this
talking
year
liquid
to a
right
certain
now.
degree.
Yeah.
4 to 4.
And it's interesting because what happens with our reserve account is it sometimes gets a lot lower than that and it goes up because while we're waiting for the dollars to come in from the county, I mean, not the county, we get it right away. In our fiscal year, like I still haven't received any of our dollars actually from the state yet. I just got our signed final agreement last week and we're already into September. I think October we'll see that money come in. So we're using our reserves to pay for what we're doing until that money starts coming in. So then the interest changes because we've depleted for a while and it comes back up too. But at the end of each fiscal year, I look and see where are we now. And last year it was prior to our person that we've hired was like 170 with some of it coming out for this year's payroll.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that the balances fluctuate, but the interest rate on a liquid investment right now is easily in the 4.5, which is conservative.
And one item to note, if I may just add a little bit more to that, you'll notice that under strategic initiatives, it's blank, which you know me with strategic planning, it's hard for me to see where but that was done deliberately because we do have a strategic plan. We're going to be doing the strategic plan by probably 2020, early 2020, 25?
Yeah. 25.
We've got new board members, and it's time to do it. But we can't make an investment on any strategic initiatives unless we come up when we decide this is what we want to do, we're gonna use and allocate reserves to fund whatever that initiative is. But right now, nothing's budgeted, but the reserves would be that source when we decide that this is what we want to do, this is what we need to do.
And then my second question was, you were talking about basically the source of tourist traffic that comes into the county in the dollars. And just when you're marketing to these communities that are not at this time participating, can you take that information to them and say, look, we're target marketing this area and they're coming to your community? Okay, to help
With the data that we have
Yeah.
free provided to us, I can pull up an individual community and it can show for, I think back as far as 2022, how many people from outside the county have visited their area, and it tells which months are busier, what days of the week are busier, and how many, and what areas they're coming from. So we're able to show that as at a very dialed down to each community, or we can do it as a county. Like I could do it, I could present that to Scott to have to you guys on a regular basis that shows what are the numbers coming to the county as a whole.
That's a great model, so they can see the impact.
Absolutely.
And then the value of your marketing that they're only paying a small percentage for to help support. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Okay. We have a suggestion from Brian for $110,000 a year for 2 years. Any thoughts on that? Positive, negative?
Positive. I think that Brian has a good suggestion.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion then to approve the resolution with $110,000 a year over 2 years?
I'd make that motion.
Brian? Larry seconds that. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, if not, then we'll go to vote. Kelly?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Real quick before Jackie or Mark, you leave, 12.3 and 12.4 on our agenda is your guys' stuff. Is there anything you want to tell us before you leave?
I think you've heard a lot about us today.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Mark, anything?
Save.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
I didn't know that a week from today at the committee of the whole, we're going to have a representative from Greater Chicago Economic Partnership, the GSEP group. Kyle Schultz, the director, will be here, and Mark will be alongside of him. So, get to learn a little bit more about that regional role we're playing with GSEP.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, we're on to budget reviews. We got a couple of today. Supervisor of Assessments is 9.1.
This is Alex's first budget, so take it easy on him.
No, come on.
Oh, we'll be fine. My daughter asked, "Why are you getting dressed up today?" I gotta go ask for some money.
So that's teaching her that when she wants to ask for money, she needs to dress
Oh,
up?
she's gonna need to, yep.
Yeah,
I'm trying
okay.
to set precedent.
There you go.
So, Jean Gorich, our chief deputy, couldn't be here this morning. We've got a couple books in, so she's hard at work downstairs. Just wanted to say before we started that without her and without Sally Engel, who's in front next to me, I'm not sure, I probably would have been lost during this process. So I really appreciate their time and effort. So, what's next? What do we need?
Well, so, okay, so for your budget specifically, is there anything that you want to, I mean, we all got it, hopefully we all read it, right? Is there anything specifically that you want to go over pertaining to it?
No, everything's pretty much stayed pretty level. I mean, we did ask for a couple things, so just, I guess I'll go over some highlights and then some of the goals that we do plan on having. So
Okay.
over the last year, one of the things that we did was that after Bob retired, obviously I came into a new office, I had to take over and learn a couple things. So At that time, there were some opportunities to make some changes, and we took some of those changes. So I know the treasurer led a great effort to have electronic notices be put out there. We evaluated what they did, and we jumped on board with that, you know, in this year. So that's one of the highlights from this last year. So that's something that we've done and did. The goal of technology and increasing technology in education has been really important to the office, and that's kind of where, if you see an increase in the budget, that's kind of where we're looking to increase in terms of the efficiency. And with increased efficiency comes a greater opportunity for the staff to learn and continue to build on their knowledge of assessments. Some of the work that goes into what we do is pretty methodical. With some of that being taken over by technology, now we have an opportunity to kind of build on their base knowledge, and so that, you know, when people call in or when people come to the counter, they're able to really interact and educate the people and answer questions, which is really important. So some of the highlights that are in there, again, go towards increased technology, and moving forward, one of the things that we want to do is kind of continue to educate the staff, so that they're feeling a sense of accomplishment, and people are getting the real benefit of what we do in assessments, because a lot of people really don't understand how we, you know, what assessments are and how that acts, you know, in the overall tax bill. Some of the technology we're trying to incorporate is something called True Roll. That is a function of improving deeds, I'm sorry, True Roll is more of the exemptions. So we want to identify people that have and are entitled to exemptions, so that they make sure that we have them, and we don't want to erroneously give exemptions. So with the True Roll, what that has afforded us is it's really showed that our processes are solid in terms of the exemptions. So we don't really find a lot, but when we do, it kind of corroborates what needs to change, or we take things off. So it's really helped kind of, one, confirm everything that we've done so far, and it does give us that sense of confidence that what we're doing is good. So
I know that was one of the things that Bob brought to us either a year or 2 years ago, because he was finding some situations where that wasn't true, and his concern was, you know, how do you validate that? So
right, and what we found is what we had was pretty good. There are some erroneous. I mean, we have how many parcels? We have like 144,000 parcels. So there is going to be naturally some that get missed, but. And we have found some in the past, and we've kind of been able to kind of, again, identify that we've been doing, we were okay, and then the software has kind of just given us that extra confidence that what we've had is correct. So. And
are we when we find issues, I assume we go back to the tax holder of record and communicate with them to fix that, or?
We normally just remove it and then allow them with the assessment notice, the next year's assessment notice, to come, if they're entitled to it, come back and then say, this is what's you know, I'm entitled to it for XYZ reasons. So okay. We don't go back and collect. As of yet, we haven't gone back to collect any of that money because it hasn't been a lot, and also they could just be natural mistakes. Within just not reporting or a sale or something, but it's really not been from our perspective anything major. I mean,
it doesn't find us more money. It gets it put in the right.
Correct.
Yeah, it just shifts. It shifts, but
it's almost like a third-party audit. And I think we're going into our third year.
Our third year.
Talk about it in your budget review, and naturally, it yields the most in the first year you use it, yields less in the second year you use it, probably yield less this year.
Right.
We'll have to assess whether or not we want to continue it, but it's done exactly what we wanted it to.
Right, and it's verified a lot of the information that we have, so it's been a good tool.
Okay.
Where we started a contract with a company called Just Appraise that's going to help us process D-transfers within the assessments function a little quicker, which is going to allow for us to, use some of that work time to kind of help other aspects of the assessments role, so. Goals for the future obviously continues to be, like I mentioned a little while ago, education of the staff and continued outreach to a lot of people so that they understand assessments and that general function. So, and again, any increase that you see is us trying to get more certification for the staff.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was talking to a woman yesterday, and her husband had passed away. She's an elderly woman, and she had no idea how to figure out about the senior freeze. So I'm just wondering, what kind of marketing do you do for that to let the community know? I mean, some of us, it's easy. We go on the website, we can find out information, but people who don't.
Right. We don't necessarily. What happens is that the assessment notice has that information available on the assessment notice, and it's really as easy as turning it around, seeing what freezes are available or exemptions are available, and calling the phone number and calling us and asking the question. So while I know that some individual townships will go out and go to senior centers and do that kind of thing. We've been invited to go talk to people, and every time we go out there and talk to people, we bring up those exceptions because those are very important. So we don't do any marketing outside the normal education of what assessments are. And then other than that, it's just the assessment notices that we send out on a yearly basis.
Senior services.
Yeah, and yeah, we do work with senior services as well to kind of help that. So
That's what I was thinking, yeah, the different senior organizations.
So and that's one of the things that I would like to do, get more involved with actually going out there and talking to people.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is just a general question that's come up recently. There's been talk at the federal level of taxing unrealized capital gains. And so it was brought back among constituents. How is this different from the the increase in the assessed valuation on property tax? Because it's, you pay a certain amount for property and you're taxed on that amount. But then there's an increase in the assessed valuation when you have not realized that gain and you're being taxed on that amount. And so the question to me was, how is this different from this federal concept of taxing unrealized capital gains?
There's one aspect of that that's missing, and that's this, in that when property values go up, it doesn't go up only individually for your property, it also goes up for the base, all right? So it might be a more detailed conversation that we have about this, but at the end of the day, unless we had your assessment wrong, that's not happening, okay? Because, for example, if a property is worth $200,000 and we had it wrong at $120,000, you haven't been paying your fair share. And then when we correct that, that's now more to what's actually happening in the market. I'm not sure that's an unrealized tax amount, all right? An unrealized gain. So what normally does happen is when through the equalization process, we increase assessments by 10%, but then the whole base is also going up by 10%. So that's not an unrealized capital gain. So it might be skewed. So the only ones that might experience what you're talking about is somebody where the assessment was already incorrect, and now we're correcting it to something that's more appropriate. So if they want to say that's an unrealized capital gain, then I guess they might have that idea, but in all honesty, there's a possibility that they may not have been fairly assessed for the last couple of years.
That is a very good explanation, and I wanted a real, because I did not think that this was what was happening, but I couldn't remember, and now the equalized assessed valuation.
That equalized assessed value for you individually goes up 10%, but it also goes up the same amount for everyone else in that district. So it's not really an unrealized capital gain.
there any, yep.
No.
Is that your hand
No,
up?
this
or-
is mine. No, I have no
Okay.
question.
Sorry.
I'll go real emphatic when I wanna.
All right. If not, then is it consensus of the committee to move this forward?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Thank you very much. Hopefully it was painless.
Yep, no, it was. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next, County Auditor.
Stephanie is filling in for Shannon today.
All right.
And I actually have an adjusted financial sheet.
Then what was in our package?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you asked me the question about the increase, I was thinking
Me?
about it, yes.
Sorry, I made a phone call and asked a question.
Because there's been some changes about, they have a couple part-timers and a full-time position. And the budget that I had for personnel was tracking pretty close to where they're actually running. But then I remembered that there's an ARPA position that I had to pull out. So at the end of the year, we will pull it out of actual as well, but this I think is a better representation of.
I was trying to, I called because when I was looking at this, I was trying to understand why personnel went up so much when there was no change in personnel itself, so that's.
Yeah.
It was okay, that was what precipitated
I'm worried
this.
the auditor gave herself a $75,000 raise.
No, I wasn't worried about that, because that's contractual, we did give her a raise, but, or the position, I should say, not her specifically, but the position a raise.
So yes, I'm sorry.
It didn't look right to me, so that's why I called. Anyways, okay.
Okay, so for budget-wise, nothing is really changing much. So I just wanted to go over a few of the highlights from this last year and then our goals for this next year. We had two big events, I guess, that happened during the year. The approval of the travel and business expense policy, which was over a year in the making, lots of revisions and working with a lot of different people. Some of the benefits that we've seen with that is with the change to the per diem meals, it saves employees time when they're preparing their expense reimbursements. They don't have to keep all their receipts. So we've heard good feedback back on that. And then it saves review time too, where we're not having to look through each receipt and making sure that they're only tipping 20% and they're staying below a certain amount. So that's been definitely helpful. And then we provided 3 training sessions that were open to all departments on the new policy and the new forms. And we've also provided additional training for a few individual departments that have requested it. And so that's been really helpful too, just to get in and talk with more employees and get their feedback. We've made changes to the forms based on employee feedback. So it seems to be working well the way that it is right now. The other big thing is that we implemented our audit software, Workiva, and that has been a wonderful thing to help us streamline the audit process. We can send requests for documents to departments straight through the audit software, and then they can upload the information directly into the software. And so it reduces the need of paper or emailing things back and forth. And then with findings or issues as they come up during the audit, we can talk to the department head, go through it, and then we can send them a request at that time to get their management response for that issue. And so it helps on the back end when we're preparing the audit reports, because when they receive the draft, when the department head receives the draft, it's not the first time they're seeing the findings in writing. They've already received them, they've thought about their management response, and so there's a quicker turnaround time for that. As far as our goals for next year, again with Workiva, we just want to make sure that all of our staff is cross-trained. We are continuing to receive more requests for audits from department heads, and so it is important with a small staff, it's important that we all are working on audits. in addition to approving invoices and RQs and POs, but we all need to be working on audits so that we can help the departments when they're requesting help. Timely processing of weekly ARPA grants. We've seen an increase in the number of ARPA grants invoices, and with the backup documentation for that, it can be anywhere from 1 page to 180 pages. And so it's important for us to be efficient but also thorough in our review. So that's something we're just continuing to work on. And then the third thing is updating the fraud policy. I know it hasn't been updated since I was here, so we just want to look at that and make sure that it's current. There's always new schemes that fraudsters are coming up with that we hear about from other governments or just in society, or then in whatever, the IT, the IT training that we watch. So it's important for us to have a current fraud policy, and then also for us to stay current with training on fraud, and then to educate departments and other county employees for what to look for potential fraudulent red flags. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Questions from committee?
Are you currently fully staffed or is there still an opening?
We are fully staffed right now.
Any other questions? If not, consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
County Clerk. You're doing clerk and recorder at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
And if possible, recorder then clerk.
Hey, whatever you want.
All right. And if you all are agreeable, I put together a PowerPoint just to facilitate the discussion.
It's your time to shine, however you want to shine.
All right. Great. Yes. Super. All right. I just need to share screen. So while we're getting this wound up, sitting next to me is Deborah Nieto. She's our Chief Deputy Clerk, and Hillary Huntington, she's our accountant for both the Clerk and Recorder's Office. Not with us today is the familiar face of Heather Spinard, because she is in Mexico becoming Heather Jones. So congratulations to Heather and Dave. If they're out there watching, and I certainly hope they're not.
You'll have to be awfully bored on their honeymoon.
Right.
You can take a clip from the meeting and send it to her.
Oh, I fully intend to,
Okay.
yes, yeah, to the both of them, yeah. Very happy for them, though, what a great couple. So if you're agreeable, I've taken the data in the, I guess, from years in corporate, I can't have a conversation without a PowerPoint. So I've taken the data and just kind of broke it down into a few slides. If there's a high level, 100 words or less headline to this is not much is changing, and there's a couple small supplementals. In the Recorder's Office, the org chart has stayed pretty much the same. About this time last year, we went down from 13 to 10 employees as a reflection of the soft housing market, unfortunately. That has not changed a great deal in the past year. So we are still at that, and the makeup looks just as it does there. And there again, you see that change from 13 FTE down to 10 at the end of last year. So highlights, we work very hard to get the word out on our property fraud alert. Property fraud has increased dramatically in the past 2 years. Organization called PRIA, the Property Records Industrial Association, Industry Association. It was really the centerpiece of their most recent conference was that fraud. And to that end, besides the increased attention to property fraud alert, I believe we're the first, at least in Illinois, to implement a new non-disclosure agreement for some of our partners that buy bulk data from the recorder's office that talks to the threat of derivative AI products as a result of their ability to have access to that vast amount of data, and actually builds in liquidated damages for violations of that NDA, which is also something that's pretty much unheard of in government agreements. We've made a substantial improvement to our Laredo product, which is what real estate professionals use in public. Now you can literally sit on your phone by the pool. Heather could right now be looking through documents, and it's far more easy to navigate, modern, and it moved a lot of the software off of the desktop and back sort of to the cloud, if you will. Sort of less interesting is we implemented a GIS fee increase. A lot of what GIS gets in terms of funding comes through our office, which makes it appear like we're increasing fees, but it's a pass-through, like so much of what we get is. We're very excited to work with Treasurer Kurtz on the Welcome Home project, and so now we're using the data that we have to reach out to new homeowners, new property owners, and let them know that they have a tax bill that's due. All the things that they signed, all the things that they agreed to, the hundreds and hundreds of pages, may have slipped their mind that they may owe tax. And we don't want them to end up in the delinquent tax process. And so we're hoping that this will reduce that. So that's been a great collaboration with Treasurer Kurtz. And we've implemented some predictable fee schedules, and the interesting thing was where the state ended up is where we pretty much already were, minus some changes in nomenclature. So for us, that change was very nominal. And goals, so we're always looking for ways to make our employees' work lives more fulfilling. We have an office dog, which isn't really on our thing, but it's actually Hillary's dog. She brings Mac is his name, in several times a week, and he really has been a boost for morale, not just for our employees, but people across the county want to see Mac, and our usual customers, they'll come with the papers, but they're looking like, where's Mac, and he's I wouldn't recommend it for every office and every dog, but Mac has the kind of disposition that really makes this possible. So that's been a real, quite a success. And just one of the ways that, we're trying to make, work life a little more tolerable. We have a piece of equipment in the public vault that it's finally time to get rid of. It looks a lot like a pizza oven, and it used to store microfiche. All that microfiche is now all electronically stored, so we don't need that. Nobody in the world maintains it anymore, but there are some people who, as I understand it, there's a market for the parts. So people may buy it from us and parts it out. And again, we're really going to work hard to increase property fraud alert subscribers. I think if you haven't heard, somebody tried to steal Graceland, Elvis's childhood or adult home, and through a property fraud scam. So it's really getting more nefarious, and they're getting far more capable than they have been.
Yes.
The headline here is it's flat. In terms of revenue, we're hoping, and when I say hope, the pundits and people in the business in this area and nationally think there's going to be some improvement in 25, not as much as they had hoped earlier in the year, but some, and now more and more are saying that the real recovery might take till 28 or 29, really. There's new home starts coming, but they won't be, they're not going to be filled with people for at least another year or so. The cost of funding has to come down. Just a ton of things that are just really, kind of biting into the home market. And then in terms of expense, it's other than the increase in personnel costs, which is driven by merit increase, really nothing changing there. Automation fund. So we have seen a little more in terms of revenue there, thankfully. And I think some of that is driven by the people who are buying houses, we're still a desirable place to buy a home, I guess is the long and the short of it. So we're doing better than some counties are. But again, not a tremendous amount of difference this year to last. Questions on any of that? Not a lot of sexy going on there. Okay. So clerk's office, similar to the recorder's office in terms of structure, we're the same as we have been for the past several years. At 20, we're hopeful, barring any bizarre calamity, that the addition of the new election center will allow us to spend less on overtime this year. It's hard to gauge how much less, but directionally, I think we can comfortably say that. So in terms of highlights, poll book implementation, so we had some older poll books that were at the end of their sort of natural life. We went to the market, and I think we've done a really good job this year using the RFP process to get some good deals from the vendors that we work with. And the poll books are not only like financially in a number of different ways a good deal, but this particular company, let me back up a second. You may have heard about threats of election day mayhem by way of computer issues and so on and so forth. The company that we bought our poll books from has more certifications from more states than any of them. Illinois doesn't have a certification, sadly. And they are in the process of being the first poll book manufacturer to get certified from the EAC, which is huge. So it speaks to their commitment to security and their capabilities in terms of security. It also gives us tremendous amount greater information, greater opportunities to manage the equipment, to understand the state of the equipment out in the field. It is just worlds different and better in oh so many ways. The presidential primary was, interesting election. It's when first asked about it and why the turnout wasn't greater, the idea that people had already picked pretty much who they wanted before at the top of the ticket. And so that, I think, kept the turnout somewhat lower than you might expect. It just wasn't contentious. However, obviously, the election, the general election is considerably different. So we're looking forward to a very active general election. And the election center is probably the big story of the year. We took our first meaningful walk inside it on August 15th of last year, and our first training class was August 14th of this year. So it was almost a year to the day that we spent working on that new place. And it will really, for the voters, for the employees, it will in many ways transform the experience of voting. From the fact that we have glass that allows people on the street to look in and see what we're doing, to the fact that our employees won't have to suffer the repeated workouts required to facilitate the election, and some additional ways that we can be more, we can control security and accountability to a greater degree. It's going to be a real boon for the hosting elections this year and in the future. And then we also collaborated with the ROE earlier this year to work with them to attempt to recruit high school election judges. And I would say that it was the first salvo in that. Another thing that the Election Center gives us is an opportunity to have schools come in and actually understand what it means to vote, see the equipment. Right now we're in formal training, but when we don't have formal training, we have a test election set up and people can walk through the process of voting. And so we're hoping to do that with schools in the area and encouraging them along the way to be election judges. 2025 goals, well, the consolidated election is coming up, and while many people think of this as a smaller election because it doesn't have the advertising budget and the top-down emphasis and product that the general election, the even year elections do, this is actually a far more complicated election for us than presidential or gubernatorial. We have to interact with hundreds of, over 100 taxing bodies. Many of them are acting in the role of election officer, and it might be their first time, it may turn out to be their only time that they do that. So we have to work with training them and working with them and collecting the information. And then, while we may have 320 some ballot styles in this election, we'll probably have 1,000 more in the consolidated election. So it is a considerably more complicated, especially from the perspective of laying out ballots, testing the ballots, provisioning and testing the equipment and that sort of thing. It's a far greater effort. And then, in the past 6 years, we've spent a lot of time working on election processes and technology, and we've really transformed from the registration process through voting, and so it's due time for us to take a look at some of our vital record processes. A lot of them really haven't been changed in probably a decade. So we'll be taking a look at some of those during the summer. The biggest difference that you'll see here, and in the past, we've had a couple of discussions about where postage should go. So that reduction that you see there is primarily postage moving off of my budget. And Carrie and Peter and I had a discussion the other day, and it's going to go into, I'm going to misspeak, but the Adam Latandra's, not provisioning, but what's the word?
Procurement?
Procurement is the word, thanks. I couldn't think of the word. So it's going to move into that budget, but otherwise things are staying pretty consistent here as well. And the automation fund is certainly not a substantial fund, but here again, pretty consistent. And now supplemental requests. So we have two. The first one is an increase in election judge pay, and that's going to be about $35,000. We'd like to stay consistent with minimum wage. And that was, I think, in part, just as a respect, sort of human respect for the work that they're doing, that they should be paid minimum wage. And also in discussions with HR, the feeling was that if we're bringing them here and we're treating them in a way similar to employees, it would make the most sense to pay them as we would pay an employee. So the delta between where we are now and likely where we'll be is about $35,000. And that's obviously approximated. It depends on the hours required to do the work, but that's a pretty good guess. Any thoughts or feelings or comments on that particular?
We pay them a day, we pay them for a flat day rate, correct?
But it's based on, well, yes and no. So for election day, we pay a flat rate, but it's based on an hourly rate, which is also the hourly rate that we use for early voting.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And then tabulator battery replacement. So those big things that look like garbage totes that you put your ballot in, there's a number of batteries in there that, among other things, keep time and in case of a power outage would allow us to minimally turn the machines off in an orderly fashion, or conceivably leave them run for some period of time if the power was out. Those have a expected lifetime about 5 to 6 years. We're on the 8th year and we're starting to see them fail. Having a great number of them fail in the field obviously would be a very bad place to be. So it makes sense for us in our annual preventative maintenance, which occurs every year. Every year we take the tabulators down, they're taken apart, they're cleaned, they're calibrated, and put back together. So while we have those things open, to take advantage of that labor that's already baked in and replace the batteries. And so that's about $50,000 to do that. And it's a pay me now, pay me more later sort of circumstance. Because otherwise we'd end up having to send somebody out to replace it in the field in real time, hopefully with one that would work, because if we have enough spares, and then we'd have to send that off to be repaired, and that doesn't make a ton of sense. They are gonna perish. Any questions or thoughts on that one?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Joe, with regards to battery replacement, is there a schedule that you use, or this is just replacing all batteries for all tabulators, or are we looking at, maybe looking at the schedule for a third of them going out in 1 year, and that's the next one's next third, and the next third, that cycle going?
So the advised schedule was 5 to 6 years, and since we hadn't seen anything really fail, and also with the inherent knowledge that they don't get a ton of activity. They're not used on a daily basis for the most part. So that's why we delayed it. I don't think it's prudent to do a third this year, third next year, et cetera, because they are failing at this point. And so the likelihood that a substantial amount would fail before, say, this time next year is pretty high. And knowing which of those would fail, to replace those, again, we come back to that. We're going to have the machines open. The battery's going to be right there. We can replace it while we have it open and reduce the labor cost, or we can try to predict which ones are close to failure and figure out which ones those are and replace those. Ultimately, they're all going to need to be replaced.
Yeah, I'm really suggesting that we kind of take these and do them on a system. But once they're all replaced, is there looking at a rotation correction?
You're breaking up a little bit, but let me see if I caught your intent. It sounds like you said that you don't have much of an argument with the current, but the question of doing a cycle in the future, is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I understand that, and for a lot of reasons I can see where you might suggest that. The fact is that the batteries have a pretty typical, predictable lifespan. And so we find ourselves in the same predicament 5 or 6 or 8 years from now. We could replace them sooner. We would replace a third of them in 5 years, and likely they wouldn't need to be replaced. And then a third of them on the 6th year, many of them would likely not need to be replaced, and then replace them again the last third of the 7th year, and maybe at that point actually replace some that were failing, or we could just wait until they start demonstrating their demise and use that as the signal for replacing them. It just seems like we can delay spending the money entirely by a couple years, and in the long run, potentially spend less.
Thank you.
Certainly. Yes?
Do the number of votes cast match a reasonable amount of the number of registered voters? And then, in addition to that, do we know that our registered voters are legal citizens? So
votes cast will almost always be far smaller than the number of registered voters. I think the highest since I've been here, it was like 72% or something like that. I'm shooting from the hip here, 72, 76, something like that. In terms of, do we know that everyone who is a registered voter is a legal citizen? We can't say that with absolute certainty, no. Partly because some of the people have been registered for 40 years, and we have no idea what their particular status was 40 years ago. In many cases, we don't even have a proper date of birth for some folks, because back when they were originally registered, we didn't take, date of birth. The good news, if you will, is that we back up a step. Most of our new registrations come by way of the DMV. The good news is that the Secretary of State has implemented some additional safeguards to prevent people who are not citizens from entering that registration stream. So, and again, I'm shooting from the hip, but it's on our website. If you go into County Clerk News, you can see a report about it. But basically, when you come to the DMV to get a driver's license, you have to provide some different sorts of identification. If those sorts of identification, and then they're not only going to present them, but they're going to catalog those in their system. So if the kind of documentation that you provide doesn't prove citizenship, then the screens that would allow them to get into the registration stream don't appear anymore. So it's you know, we can put a man on the moon, nothing's impossible, but they have taken these steps, and it's really very appreciated that they've taken those steps. But so you're not going to present a matricular card from Mexico and be given the opportunity to register. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions?
I want to go back to the tabulators. So how old are the current ones that you have?
They're 8 years old.
How long do they usually last?
You know, they can last up to 20 years. The last ones were, I think, a little over 20 years. Again, they don't get a lot of daily use. And so they're still fairly young. There's been no dramatic increases in technology that a change in software couldn't accommodate. So yeah, I think we've got a good long time. We've got a couple of these battery cycles. That's probably what you're getting at.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, and then me too. So if we went, you know, 7 or 8 years between battery changes, that would put us at 3 of those cycles.
Okay, all right. Also, you were talking about election judges. Do we have enough election judges?
We never have enough election judges. I will never ever say enough election judges. We're always recruiting election judges. We're in a good place for this election, but absolutely every chance that I get to talk to people, I'm saying, be an election judge. It's now a holiday for a lot of people, for goodness sakes. Take the day, hang out with your neighbors, do your little community service, get a couple bucks, and help us out. I mean, it's really, and the interesting thing when I try to sell it to people is almost everyone who becomes an election judge stays an election judge. And because they find it that rewarding. It's certainly not the pay, as we've discussed.
Not the hours.
It's not the hours.
No.
Holy smokes, yeah, definitely not the hours. But there is a very unique patriotic sense when you wrap it up for the day that you've really contributed, you know, part of history. And so people, I think, appreciate that and come back for that more than anything else.
Okay, so a couple more questions.
Yeah.
The rental for the election center, that's an ARPA, correct?
I believe it is,
So
yes.
that's why it's not in the budget. Okay,
Right.
wanted to make sure. And then when we go back to the election, are the polling place, do we have any polling place changes?
We do, and we've, but only a couple.
Yeah, I think there were 2.
2.
We went back to one polling place that had construction, and we've moved out of one due to construction.
Okay.
So, and those are posted on our website now.
Yeah.
Website, and then people have been notified by their.
Yes, got the cards, yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, will each of those have a Dropbox? And I assume this Dropbox will be open too?
Will each of those?
Polling places?
I
No,
think early voting sites have.
only early voting sites. The same early voting sites will have drop boxes as had them before. And the drop box that is here will remain here.
There's one change because we added an early voting site.
That's right.
The Crystal Lake Library
Yeah.
came to us and said they'd like to be an early voting site. So we moved the Dropbox to them and moved it out of McHenry City Hall because the City Hall is extremely small.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the room to have people coming in with their ballots and putting them in the box, as well as processing voters. But the Crystal Lake Library is much bigger, so.
Yes.
Yeah. And those are also posted on our website.
Yes.
I have 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Are we getting any closer to being able to do print-on-demand ballots on day of election?
So are we getting closer? The capability exists now. The issue is that in almost every instance where you hear of a problem happening on election day, it's that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, and so, in the poll book company that we went with, one of the advantages is they are like maybe the leaders, if you will, in that technology, and they have a highly integrated platform that allows you to do that sort of thing. And so if you wanted to do ballot on demand, that would be the company that you'd want to do it with. But at the same time, I'd kind of like to see another cycle or two go through. That kerfuffle that happened in the midterms in Arizona, when it was all said and done, it was poor configuration and use of ballot on demand, for example. Neighboring county went to ballot on demand, and I shouldn't laugh, but when it came time to print the ballot and print it out on the little receipt, and as you can imagine, that is not very useful. So, yeah, so there's still some things to be dealt with there.
It would just, I mean, especially when you're dealing with, in the spring election, with so many different ballots.
Yeah.
And typically speaking, low turnout. I know your printing costs go through the roof.
Yeah.
For the spring election, and that would definitely save some headache and time.
Yes, absolutely. Would love to do it. Again, I just want to see a little more success in that area before I commit to it.
Okay. And then the other question is, I'd asked this last year about universal polling sites on day of election, and you had said legislatively you weren't allowed to do that, technically, sort of, kind of,
right.
Maybe, sort of. So I'm just trying to figure out where that's at.
Yeah, so so we have one, which is the election center. It was in that room. It is a priority. I sit on the legislative committee for county clerks and recorders. We're convening a meeting of the full state contingent, and that's one of the priorities, is to try to get to a place where the legislation would support that sort of thing, and a different way to determine where you put a polling place then. So if it's not precinct-based, is it voter-based, is it turnout-based, how do you staff that? All these questions still need to be sort of sorted out first, but that is a top priority for us. And it's driven in large part by the increased participation in vote by mail and the decreased participation in election judges. I mean, it's just hard to get election judges. You're getting older, moving away, and less interested in it. So rather than manning some polling places that get very little activity, if we could move those judges to a place that got more activity and maybe scooted that polling place over a little bit, we could do a better job for everybody involved. So the high priority is the long and the short of that.
Okay. Any other questions? Larry?
Yeah, the postage thing, that's moving to the procurement office, was that in commodities before?
I believe it was.
Okay. I mean, that would.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you said that even though I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? Okay, if not, consensus of the committee to move the clerk and the recorder's budgets forward?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you very much. Treasurer?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee.
We wait a little bit longer, it'll be good afternoon.
I know, that's why I looked at the clock before I said anything, so. I would like to use the PC to present as well.
Do you have a
Is that
PowerPoint
okay?
on a flash drive?
I don't. Oh, yeah, I do. Let me save it. Yeah, sorry, Greg. You know, there's something to be said for being upstaged by the clerk. He put together such a nice presentation, and I had notes on what I wanted to present. Oh, let me just save it.
She's got it on this PC.
I have it on this PC. Yeah. Sorry, Greg. And so in any event, I started thinking, you know, why should I just let you have to go through all of those pages that my staff and I work so hard on and not give you an overview that I think will help you to process, I think, everything that we've put together. So I'm going to do that.
If you want, Donna, we can do a different one and then.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I think this will do it. But yeah, let's talk about a few themes for this presentation today. First off, I want to talk about what I think is the first line of my presentation, and that is collaboration. That has been the story of our success in this particular budget year. And what should I sit there and manage that? Okay, thank you, Greg. So when I talk about collaboration, we do it seamlessly. We've been doing it seamlessly before I came on. And it is really a source of pride for me to get to be part of it. I want to introduce my chief deputy. She's going to be retiring next year. And of course, I'm very choked up because what the heck am I going to do without her? So we're very, very lucky to have had Francine here for 24 years of service, and I guess we'll move on over here. That's also a point of collaboration. So,
to go to the next slide.
Oh, great, thank you. All right, so let's talk about highlights. I want to say something about the Welcome Home Project. The Welcome Home Project came about because I had people coming to me saying, I closed on my house and you sent me a huge tax bill in November and my taxes are going to be sold, and what's going on? In the closing, that was not a point that was informed upon them by their attorney. Potentially what we see is about 10% are not getting the message. And there's two ways to handle it. Say, too bad, pay up, or say, what can we do better as government to respond to this? Because what's the point of being, in my opinion, the best county in Illinois, maybe even in the country, if you're not thinking about new people coming in and having as good of an experience as possible when it comes to their property taxes. So I talked to Joe. I said, what can we do? I talked to my staff. I complained and complained. Everyone agreed. And Joe came up with an IT program. He did some software development. And with that, we had the tool. Then my staff worked with his staff. We put together the letter. We send out a joint letter from Joe and myself saying, hey, here's your property tax bill. You're running late, or you're going to be late. And so get on it, because you are responsible and we are happy you're here. And we want you to know this. So it was an element of proactivity on our part. We're improving our process on it. But that's the kind of thing you do when you have a win-win and you have a commitment to the taxpayer, which we all did. So it was a cool thing. Let's go through the other bullet items, because I'm between you and lunch, and I realize that. RFQ, that was a great learning. And we put all kinds of technology into that tax bill that if you want me to talk further, I will, though we had a wonderful board meeting where we talked about all the cool things that we were doing because we did an RFP, and we had a great group of people from purchasing, Dawana in particular, that helped us in a huge way, and Jeff as well. Hey, is this cool or not? The U.S. State Department says You guys, McHenry County Treasurer, we're one of the top passport processing sites in the county. When your constituents say, hey, who can I count on to get this done and do it right without mistakes? Believe it or not, people make mistakes and then they don't get, and then that processing organization is not able to process. People don't get their passports in time. Well, you want to recommend the best place, come to us. And by the way, the revenue, as you know, offsets one of our head counts. So we take that off of the taxpayer. So certainly proud of that. That's been there. I'm not the, I don't get credit for that, but I'm proud that our office does that. That's been in place. And then finally, the VIP taxpayer program. Alicia helped me coin that. There's another product name for it, but we have a really cool program in this county where we're saying, hey, you want to go electronic? You want to go electronic in the biggest, best way possible, so you've got automated features. Guess what? VIP taxpayers for you. And you know what? Alex didn't mention this, but you know, I talked about collaboration with the assessor. Alex said, who did you choose for your bill, your tax bill? I told them, and I told them why. And they went ahead, they assessed, they went with the same vendor. They told me later. And now we have, in fact, Alex and I should do a demo to show you guys. You now have an electronic file box, a file cabinet that has your assessments and your tax bills in the same place. So it's like, whoa, you know, if you're managing a lot of properties, for example, you are a very detail-oriented property owner, you now, starting this year, have tax bills and assessment notifications that are coming into a single place for you as a validated taxpayer. So, really neat stuff. Okay, so those are some of our highlights. Not to brag, but the handout you have has some really cool things too, but you know, hey, it's not fair to keep you here for 2 hours or something, right? Plus you'll probably not pass my budget if I'm not thinking about it, but you know, your lunch hour, right? So our goals. I want to say our goals are also activities that we've been conducting like in the last 6 months. And so they are in many cases a continuation. Obviously, build on VIP taxpayer, continuing the marketing. Marketing, you know, with the best of the best, and that's what we have in this county. Marketing never ends. The outreach, the communication, it never ends. And we intend to continue to build on that VIP taxpayer. Also, faster automation to process payments. And you think, oh, okay, why is that important? Well, if we don't process these payments properly, and we've identified so many workflow stoppage, you know, dropping the ball, technology not being implemented where it could be, just, you know, things that aggravate the you-know-what out of me. Ridiculous. And we have been doing that examination, finding out what the problems were, and then meeting with the vendors. Why is that important? Because taxpayers put in a payment, and within a week they should expect to have a payment showing up. And when they call us and say, my bank hasn't taken that payment out, and they say, what do you see? Has it made payment? That takes time out of my staff, who are already stressed out and working hard to process 140,000 tax bills twice in a 4-month period. And secondly, and probably more importantly to us who serve the taxpayer, people are stressed, the taxpayer is stressed. This is a lot of money. Why? Because the payments aren't getting processed quickly. We're dealing with that, and we're going to see some significant improvements next year. We've already seen good improvements this year with the centralization of the P.O. box in a central post office in Carroll Street. More to follow. We are working on so many different levels and bringing it together. So I'm excited about that. We're going to continue to build and post on the website. The website is a living entity here in the way we do business, and we reference it when we're calling people and they have questions. We're referencing it, but we're also getting outreach, as I mentioned here, with more taxpayer outreach programs, because not only do you got to post it, but you got to go out there and talk to people. So we're going to be doing more of that. And by the way, I appreciate, as I look around here, I appreciate County Board Meshes for coming to one of our programs, participating, and showing her commitment to our outreach program. That means a lot. We'll continue to keep you informed as you are doing your business, because we want you to participate. We want people to know who you are, because that means government is even more accessible. That's a win for all of us. I also want to thank Greg, who's been our dude on the website, the boy genius, who has done so many cool things to help us. You know, we'll have an idea and he'll take it to the next level. I mean, like, wow, who does that, right? It's so cool. We love working with him. He's accessible, he's creative, and he's just fun to be with. So we couldn't ask for a better partner. I also want to mention, okay guys, drum roll. Additional revenue opportunities. Most of you that know me know I love to make money. I love to make money for the county. And we are always looking for additional revenue opportunities. I mean, staff kind of, rolls their eyes at me, like, oh, stop. But this is one we think is going to be big. I'm not sure. We have some laws to check, so my revenues don't reflect what I think could be a little bit of a gold mine. But if we can use passport cards to replace the real ID cards, we're going to competing not just with passport centers, processing centers like the mail, post office, or the libraries. We're going to also be competing with the DMV. Now, if you were a taxpayer, which you are, and you knew that we were one of the top places in the region to come to, you'd come to us over DMV. You would come to us, and we want that revenue because it offsets expenses that helps pay down taxes. So there we go. And that is one of them that we're going to be working on. So you'll see some marketing effort on that later this year and then getting into next year. And then some internal office improvements. We're adding a new drop box. We're removing a very ugly, antiquated ATM machine. This just looks horrible. We're going to put a really beautiful drop box there. We want people to make their payment on time. We don't want them to be late. We don't want them to pay penalties. But if they're late, they are paying penalties. With very few exceptions, you're late, too bad. I mean, it's a tough place to be, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Excuse me. And then finally, we want to assess other RFP opportunities. Board Member Wagner, I know you had mentioned at my very first meeting, hey, I hope you're going to be assessing other vendors. We are, and we have some ideas about who and where. The issue is we got to deal with the highest need. And what we went through with that first RFP was just killer. I mean, we worked so hard on that. But we are going to continue to examine vendors. I do have some thoughts on doing some changes. And we are making some preliminary changes with our investment management approach and the vendors we're using. Not truly an RFQ at this point, but it is setting us up for that. So, thank you. And then finally, I want to promote, look at our packet. I feel we're doing some very cool things. And most importantly, I'm going to go back to the Saturday before due date. I put that in there. That was really a trick. That was not exactly a goal. It was an opportunity for me to tell you and your constituents, Saturday, we're open. We're open for business. We're open for business because people work during the week and we respect that. So we want them to come on Saturday. They don't come often enough. We want them to know Saturday we're here. There's no lines. We have staff. It's an important service that we have instituted. And I want you to tell people there's no reason to be late unless you forget. And we're doing everything to mark it the heck out of. Due date next Tuesday, September 10th. Okay, so unless you have any questions, let's get to the numbers. The numbers, that's always the important part of it. I gave you a high level. I wanted to let you know our revenues are going to be declining. These are projected. Why are they declining? Well, there's little reasons, but the big reasons, and the little reasons, frankly, I can't anticipate. But I can anticipate the big ones. The big ones are, you know, we've had a great ARPA program, and, you know, we've gotten, what, like $60 million, of which 36 of it has been invested. We've made a lot of money. If you ever want me to give you the whole enchilada on how much money we've made, be glad to do that. I know Carrie has asked me to come at some point, and she and I will put together a presentation. By the way, Carrie has been great for us to collaborate with too. We love working with her and her team. We're really glad to have Carrie as our CFO because she's so accommodating to help people be successful. So I appreciate all your help. So ARPA, money going down. People need to pay their bills. So what we're projecting is as our investments mature, we are going to see what amounts to 12.115 million between 24 and 25. We're gonna see that overall amount of funds being reduced. You saw that in the measurements, primary, or the indicators, the performance indicators. So we reflect those numbers in there. And then finally, declining interest rates. I think we're all aware of that situation. The good news is you can buy a house easier over at some point when it gets to more manageable levels. Bad news is people like me can't make as much money for people like you. So we see it going down 1%. We anticipate Fed taking its quarter point over the next 4 months. I think they're going to give it a rest after the first of the year. I don't see them taking it down progressively a quarter of a point because the ugly head of inflation is always out there at this point. I don't think we've gotten through everything, but I could be wrong. But in any event, we made our projections of income based on that declining revenue, or that declining revenue based on that declining interest rate. So, you know, at the same time, I don't reflect this in my numbers, but I'm always, you know, kind of keeping my eyes open to see where is there money that isn't being used. And I do want to point out, I really appreciate the Mental Health Board and Leo Rizzi reaching out to me. We've met with her once. We've talked about how we would work with her organization, given that they've got about a $5 million surplus potentially coming in on a monthly basis. We know that isn't a final number because it's subject to how much people are spending. But given that situation, she's now invited us to tentatively September 16th to have a presentation. So we'll see how we can work with them. Every portfolio that we have is tailored to that organization. And that organization has different duration, liquidity, spending requirements, and we work hard to address them. So, with that, so then, again, the revenue slide is, the theme there is declining in our revenues. But guess what? Same theme for expenses. We have certainly a reduction in our expenses, as you noted, in the overall expenses that we have. And the reason for that is we had a capital project in our budget last year that has been completed. That is a camera project, and that helps us maintain our industry standards. And then our personnel costs, we see some increase there. That had to do with how we had allocated various salaries and headcounts, and then also a retirement payout. So that's where we're at. And then we can go back to anything, but before I do want to say thank you. You know, I really respect and appreciate the work and commitment you provide to our county, and the advice and the guidance. So with that, can you guys give me some tough questions? We work so hard to be prepared for your discussion, and we want to make sure you get a good handle on what we've done and how we can do better.
Yeah.
Just a quick
Go ahead.
question. So on the Treasurer's Automation Fund, contractual costs are going up by 26%. And then if you go down to the Treasurer Passport Services, contractual is going down by 90%. What is the main reason for these increases?
The automation fund is what we're using for some of the building inside our office, some of the reconfiguration that we're doing. And we decided to use the automation fund for that. It's around I think it's like $19.6 thousand. And so that is why. We have an old bank building that is really not the best, except that we are the only one in the state, I'm told, that has a drive-through. So that is pretty cool. So we give up one thing, a nice office layout for the drive-through, which is really pretty nice. It's well worth it. But we still need to reconfigure that office space for our employees, so it's in terms of Passport, we have just taken into account that we had extra costs in there, and we recognized from our spending that there was an opportunity to reduce them. Yeah, and I do want to also add, Ms. Wagner, that we had spent, and allocated more last year because of camera equipment and things of that nature. This year, those cameras are working well, and we don't see the need to plan. We do have backup for sure, very significant backup, but it's like, if you don't need it, take it out of the budget. So thank you very much for the questions.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, consensus of the committee to move the budget forward? Yes? Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, Board.
Economic Development Fund, Scott. After you get the next two.
Oh, did Brian vote yes too? Did you vote yes?
Yeah, if you could, please.
You did. Hi, Brian. I forgot you were there, that's all.
You plug back in?
Yeah, I'm gonna plug back in. So in light of your discussions this morning for MCEC and NMC, Carrie's passing out an updated budget that reflects those amounts and also makes a change to more accurately reflect how the MCEDC personnel and revenue offset are being reflected. So we're gonna work off of this document if you don't mind.
That's good, because I had questions on the other one.
Yeah. Still may have questions on this one, but let's see. All right. And as you were talking and deliberating this morning and following up from our discussion last month, I'm sure the same point was in your mind as it was in mine. Like, a model would just help you understand how the Economic Development Fund ebbs and flows and where the fund balance is, because we said before it was depleting, and I'm really happy to deliver. I'm gonna share the screen. Drum roll, please. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, no, come on. Hold on, let me make sure it's up here. Okay, all right. It is. Oh, where did it go?
You have so many.
I have so much
tabs.
open. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. So, this would help backstop your discussion. We talked last month with the Economic Development Fund. This is really where your MCEDC and National McHenry County and other partnerships come out of. This is a designated fund that has its legacy back in what used to be known as the revolving loan fund, which was used to provide low interest loans, a little higher risk to businesses for various different reasons. The county wanted to get out of the loan business, and that fund balance that accrued was really open for whatever the county wanted to do. It was your money. And then the decision was made actually from this committee to say, let's designate that to economic development purposes. So the Economic Development Fund, which is Fund 302, is now the source for those partnerships, and there's a few other items that come out of it. But over the years, that fund balance was depleting because there was not an infusion of revenues into it. You were just living off of that accrued fund balance. But we know that without adding to it at some point in time, it's going to come down to zero. So to continue to support your economic development initiatives, either the county would absorb some of those if you continue those partnerships, or you supplement the Economic Development Fund with revenues to help keep it afloat, to help cover those costs, and to really designate these dollars for economic development purposes. And that's really the whole key, is you're making a statement to say, this is important for the county, that we invest in economic development, and here's money that's going to be used for that purpose. So, Mr. Chairman, I can give it back to you to say I can either work with the model, or we can go off to the budget sheet that was passed out. I can show you what's involved.
Let's go off the budget sheets.
All right, budget sheet?
Yes.
Okay. So just looking at the budget, so with the fund balance, and as Treasurer, as she pointed out, we have been really active in trying to invest any available fund balance. The Economic Development Fund has been generating interest with money just sitting in the bank account. The Associated Bank was giving us almost 5.5% on its cash. But as that fund balance depletes, that number reduces. But we're still generating, for this fiscal year, this upcoming fiscal year, anticipating a healthy fund balance. I'll have to confer with Donna on, when she said it's going to go from 5.33 to 4.33%, what that means. But this is an adjusted revenue for interest, but it shows $45,000. Actually, I don't have the sheet to put on the screen, so we're just working off the sheet.
I'm just looking, it's okay.
Yep. Intergovernmental, this is a new line item that didn't exist before. This is the MCEDC's or offset of their personnel costs. So you're going to recommend that they get $175,000 from the county. That's going to be absorbed in their personnel expenses, their salaries and their benefits. It's not going to cover all those costs, so MCEDC is actually going to owe the county back, because the way the agreement is structured, if there's any overage, they owe the county. So that $69,000 represents the difference between their $244,000 in personnel costs minus the $175,000 that you're going to recommend moving forward, assuming the county board approves that. So that shows as a revenue back into the fund. Then we go down to so utilization of fund balance. That would basically obviously be the difference when we get into the expenditures of what the revenues are minus the expenditures. Personnel costs, as we just indicated, MCEDC personnel is coming now through the county, but those expenses are shown from a budgetary standpoint out of Economic Development Fund. That keeps everything nice and contained. It's not blurred in with the general fund. I just think we think it makes a lot of sense just to keep it all contained within this fund. So in addition to that, as you may recall from last year, the county had switched a quarter of the deputy county administrator salary into the economic development fund for two primary reasons. Number one, to be more reflective of the role of the DCA has in with economic development. So both county administrator and me as deputy county administrator, we have a lot of work with economic development, so that shows it attributes some of that cost of the personnel into economic development. And secondly, that also relieved the pressure on the tort fund, because that before the deputy county administrator was 100% of tort, and that's not really fair. If other functions are being performed, the tort fund shouldn't absorb all of that cost. So this is just basically more reflective of how those those costs are shared through the organization. The other 0.25% is general fund. So contractual. Now there's several items that go into contractual, and most of them are listed on this sheet. The naturally McHenry County contract of now $110,000 is included in that. But also you have a participation in GSEP, which is about $35,000. And the contract for GSEP is still in effect for this coming fiscal year. And then R1 Planning Group is at $50,000. So those are the three partnerships in here. Once again, MCEDC is kind of taken out of that, which is why you're seeing a big change in that number from 350 to, to 210,000, because they're offset between personnel, or they're offset in the personnel costs.
So what, I'm still not adding up to 210 though.
You're not, and then there's another $4,000, which are for economic development incentives that were approved prior for Camphil, USA in Crystal Lake, and for Jessup Manufacturing. Basically, as they put additions on, the county has a program where they can offset 50% of their new EAV created. So that's about a $4,000 difference, which leaves an $11,000 undesignated amount in contractual. We can zero this out to just show what the partnerships are, but if there's an opportunity that comes up for the county where it may need some local match dollars to take advantage of an opportunity, you have some latitude within this, not much, but some. The other option would be come in for an emergency appropriation and then adjust the budget. But this just gives you a little bit of latitude, but those are $11,000 of undesignated funds. And commodities, so $10,000. That predominantly is for meeting expenses. Last year was much higher. As you can see, the utilization has been just in a few $100s. But in the event that there's an opportunity that comes up where you need a representation at a meeting, and it's flight and airfare and everything else, you have that ability within the budget. That is really just a holding place, undesignated. I'm not aware of any trips or anything that are planned, but if something does come up, and with economic development, you need to be nimble, you need to be agile, you need to be able to move in order to take advantage of these opportunities, because you're on the business's schedule, they're not on your schedule. So it provides you a little bit of latitude, so that number is just money parked in there in the event those opportunities come up. Then the final one is $5,000 operating transfer. So the history behind this is when it was the revolving loan fund, we had a finance staff that was administering all these loans. And then the general fund was always looking for ways to help support the general fund. And under the revolving loan fund dollars, which were at that time generating interest, so they had revenue coming in, the thought was, we'll offset some of those costs, which were being fully absorbed by the general fund, some of that staff costs, by an operating transfer back into the general fund. So, but that continues. And what's shown in here now, and this is really an important point to note, that we have other staff that works in economic development. And as you heard me say, the 5 pillars of our economic development program includes workforce network. And so we have actually Jeff and Jake are active out there meeting with businesses, working with businesses, the business response team they're on. So they are performing economic development functions on behalf of the county. The challenge they have is they're fully funded under the WIOA grant, which is federal, and so there's not a local match to that grant. It's all federal dollars. But those dollars are restricted. They can only spend 40% of that grant on personnel. They run into challenges when the county, looks at, doing compensation adjustments and things. That's great, well intended, but the problem is they butt up against that 40% mark. They can't exceed it. because the grant does not allow them to do it. So what this does is, this is a reflection of their role in their contributions to the county's economic development program. So basically it helps with their personnel costs because it gives them just a little bit more headroom because they have to support the entire workforce network organization within that 40% cap. So that's the intent of that operating transfer out. And with that, if there's any questions on the numbers, I'm happy to field them, and if I can't, I'm sure.
So why did that go up to 2,000?
That went up because they're running into some challenges with their personnel, with that cap, that 40% cap.
So I'm not a big fan of the extra 11 in there, to be honest with you. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I just don't. I mean, I realize that you won't spend it unless theoretically there's a reason to, but we also don't see that if you choose to do that.
Sure, it's your fund, so.
Well, it's not my fund.
No, under the contractuals, you're saying the contractuals is.
Has an additional 11 in it, yeah.
So I guess one of the questions, which I don't know, and Pete, maybe you know, is the contribution to R1 planning organization, is that?
It's solid at 30 for one more year.
Well, that's GSEP is 35, but R1
is out at 50.
50 for
49 or whatever, yeah.
Okay. So, you know, if it's the pleasure of the committee, we'll drop it to 199.
Well, really, you could, well, if you put in 35, you could drop it another 5 because you still got 30 in there for GSEP.
This is
the biggest. The GSEP is budgeted, I believe, at 50. With it's 30,000 for the actual membership for one more year, and then it was in some unknown travel. You know, for example, last year the chairman went to Japan, and we paid it right out of that spot. But it didn't cost $20,000; it cost more like $7,000. So we can certainly reduce it down to 10 and probably accomplish whatever we need to.
What? You just lost me there. It wasn't 20. What are you talking about?
The membership in GSEP was 30,000 last year.
Correct, and it's scheduled to be 30,000 this year.
What's that?
It's scheduled to be 30,000 next fiscal year.
We had, I thought we had set aside 50 to anticipate other travel. Scott referenced travel.
So yeah, so last year and that was dropped down to 25,000 per the committee. This year it's dropped even further at 10,000 to give you that opportunity. So, Chairman Scala, your point of if GSEP would be at 30,000, well, it's a little over 30, but we'll call it 30,000. 50,000 for R1 is 80, 110,000 for National McHenry County, brings you at 190, 4,000 for economic incentives, 194. 194 would cover all those non-partnership costs and economic incentives. If you want it at 194, we can make that change.
We can make it 195. I don't really care. You know, I mean, we're talking little dollars here, but it's just conceptually what.
That's fine. This is why we go through this process. So.
I'm a little confused about the GSEP thing. I heard 50,000 and then I see 30,000.
So R1 is 50? The R1 planning?
Somebody said something about 50.
I might. The membership in GSEP is $30,000.
Okay.
We had parked about $20,000 in additional, I thought, for travel.
Okay.
In anticipation of some overseas travel. We know that was realized last year, right? Chairman Bueller going to Japan. I don't know of any trips on the horizon, but I suspect there will be one. And maybe Europe this year, and whomever is chairman, whoever might, you know, they might want to use some of those dollars. That's really all we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
This is my opinion. I mean,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
5 other of you sitting here, so.
But the travel is out of commodities, that's not out of contractual, like, your travel expenses are the 10,000.
Correct.
Like, to that point, and now we're digging much deeper here than we did anybody else, we're giving the hardest time today. What, the cost of Japan was not $291, I'm sure.
No, it was about 7,000.
7,000.
And if I may, that was actually in the prior fiscal year. That wasn't
That wasn't
It
in
wasn't,
'24?
it wasn't in 20,
Oh.
Yeah,
yeah, it was in the 23, fiscal year 23.
That's still not in the commodity, it didn't show up in the
But
but
commodity.
they put it in the contractuals, that's
Yeah,
where they
they're-
dumped it.
Oh, okay,
And there was not a travel budget prior.
before, yeah.
Okay, so I'm okay with 195. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive, okay. All right, so change that one to 195.
Does that include the 4,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right, is there any other questions for Scott on this? Nope. Consensus to move that forward?
Yes.
Actually, one of the things that we talked about was there going to be a revenue stream added into this from other county sources?
Tax levy, yes.
We got
Well-
that board, why don't we carry with supplementals this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to, naturally, we'll have enough money for next fiscal year.
Yeah.
The question comes in, what are we doing in out fiscal years? And are we going to start supplementing this, or are we going to start absorbing that into the general fund? Which kind of goes into the bigger picture with all of the stuff that we have that has to be absorbed by the general fund by, you know, and to me, this just adds to the list of that, so.
That's fair. And without any additional infusion of other sources of funding, the ending fund balance we project would drop down at the end of the 25 fiscal year to a little over $400,000.
Right.
Which will tell you that will be depleted next fiscal year, FY26 fiscal year.
Okay. And that's why I said, and that goes with all the other ARPA issues that we have to roll into that conversation. Okay. All right, you want to go on to your non-departmental? Carrie's doing that? Sorry, Scott, I was trying to give you more show
I have a
time.
sense that like Scott maybe wanted to discuss whether or not we were gonna try to put the levy in for economic development.
Well, it wasn't just any source, and the whole
Yeah.
tool gives you the ability to see what would a certain amount look like. But we have it for next year.
Well, the problem is that that's a discussion that we're gonna have that discussion about a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh,
I mean,
later.
well, yeah, because this is a real problem that I
Right.
keep on bringing up. As she's passing that out, we have, this just gets added onto it, so you're
We're doing
looking.
it right now. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, it's, what am I, oh, sorry. I'm just saying, right now, next year's budget won't be a problem. 26 budget will be a problem because unless you start absorbing some of those items now, you're looking at 3.3, 3.5 million that you're gonna have to try and absorb.
Right.
Not to deflate things, but I mean, that's the reality of it.
Okay, so non-departmental, you want to talk about that one first?
Versus what?
The CFO report.
Oh, no, we wanna talk about non-departmental.
So.
I thought you were gonna have some good stuff. Sorry, it's getting close to lunchtime.
I know, so I'll go fast. So non-departmental, this is a very large budget, but honestly, most of the things on here, we've already been committed to via resolution and contracts. So all the detail is on here, a lot of it is software, some of the placeholders. We have to address things like, we've seen the commodities that were impacted by inflation. We try to help departments specifically like with fuel, election costs, postage, knowing that there are higher costs, but at the same time, we can't have everyone budgeting for worst case scenario. And I did drop down the fuel contingency because we're not realizing the actual in the sheriff's department.
It's going in the right direction for the fourth quarter.
Yes, correct. So beyond that, I don't know if you guys have specific questions.
Hey, thanks for putting that little blue box down there. That's what I was just talking about.
I know, and I made it really, I'm sorry.
They should blow that up.
I know, I know.
What blue box? Oh, right there. Oh, right there.
So it's, you know, as Mike was just talking about, always on our mind, as we're working on the last few budgets and this budget, is the end of the ARPA contribution and the impact that it will have on the general fund.
The $3.118 million impact it'll have on the general fund.
Yes.
I have a question on the front page. Account 457000 contingent. It says general FD contingency. What's that?
So the general fund contingency, that's in the budget policy. We have 400,000 budgeted in there, and that's really to help us to respond to the things that come up.
So that's just miscellaneous?
Yes.
Even though we have other things in there
And you know,
too.
honestly, we used to do a report on the contingency, which we
Well,
haven't
used
used
to-
this a lot.
Yeah, we really, I mean, it used to be 900,000. When I first became chair, it was 900,000 and we weren't using it. And I kept on going back to Ralph saying, why in the hell do we have 900,000 when we're not using it?
Yeah.
And then we would get a report that showed, you know, we'd use it for this or that, you know, just things that no one could anticipate would come up, we would put it in that bucket.
Yes.
But we really haven't been using it, and so we've been
Since
dropping
COVID,
it.
we have not been
Right.
using it, but, okay.
But for budget policy, it's supposed to be there. And
And also too, the way D365 works is if we have 400,000 in this particular line item, it helps us, we can spend it anywhere in the fours. Like I know assessments, they have a smaller budget and they had a really good training opportunity for some of their staff. So we pulled it from this budget. But I can definitely.
the only thing that would be more helpful than what you've already provided is an actual versus appropriated.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking too.
I can send that out.
Because I mean, I see what's appropriated, but I don't know what we, you know, software things, that's gonna be, should be dollar for dollar because we already know what the contract is. But so a lot of it will just be the same, should be the same numbers, but some of it won't be.
Correct. Some of the contingency ones. And really why the idea of this department is it's really this committee's department for budget control. So there will be some things in here that if it's not appropriate to spend them, it just stays out.
That's just so well stated. I mean, these things cross departments and they, rather than put the money in IT or in the sheriff's office, you know, let you guys be in charge of it. We gotta tell you if we're doing something different.
Well, it gives us a little more control versus just dumping stuff
Correct.
into, yeah.
But also the ability to respond to things that come up that we did not anticipate.
Yep.
Like election contingency, right?
Yes.
$150,000 more there. What do we want?
And it looks, on the second side, 65,05100. The lease payments on those multifunctional peripheral
Yes.
computers, I assume, they just.
Yeah, we just signed a
increased.
new lease with them. That's, yeah.
Okay.
And because then there's an additional line for that with the paper cut, the printing. Up under contractual printing. So it really was a big increase in printers.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay, consensus to move that forward?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Hey, now you're up. Well, you're up on the chief financial officer side.
Okay.
Put on that hat, take that off the hat rack that Scott bought.
Okay, so, first things first. I wanted to talk.
Are you expecting to see what's on your screen there?
Yeah,
You're not connected to the screen.
I'm in the meeting.
You joined the meeting, are you sharing your screen in the
I
meeting?
am, yes.
And that's all you're gonna be able to see. You need to be plugged into this.
Wait, what about?
Do you wanna plug into this?
No, I think this is more of a concept, so. Donna's not here. A couple months ago, it was brought to my attention that so there's two types of interest income that are recorded per fund. So we have just the bank interest, money sitting in the bank account, the 5% or whatever we're getting. And then we have the investment interest income. And they're on two separate lines. And for reasons, I'm not sure of the reasons. It was people that were here prior to Donna and I, but the direction was given to have the ARPA investment interest income to be put into the general fund as it was being booked. So this is the impact. So it's up through November is 1.2 million, and then since up to June is just under 600,000. And the reason I kind of broke them out is because we focus a lot on end of the year fund balance. So I just wanted to talk briefly about the 1.2 million and the impact to the general fund, obviously the impact to the ARPA fund, and then some ideas. We're still talking about some high level budget ideas to bring back. But now it's really timely because it's going to play a big part in our fund balance. So if you remember, I'm sure you remember from the audit presentation by Baker Tilly, the way we calculate like our monthly reserve is we take the unrestricted fund balance of the general fund, take the monthly budget for 24, and then we come up with months of reserve. And so it went from 7.51 in 22 to 7.05 at the end of 23. And so the difference between those two numbers based on the budget is 3.8 million. And so we were very specific about spending down that excess reserve and funding our capital plan. So everything was lining up well, but now we have to take into account moving that 1.8 million from the general fund to ARPA and how that affects, what we're going to be talking about in the budget and the reserves. So just a few things high level, and this isn't to make decisions. It's more as soon as I knew and I had the number, I wanted to make this committee aware because of the impact to the general fund. But then also we've been presenting to you on our ARPA updates what the interest is in the ARPA fund, which has only been the bank interest. So once we add this interest income, we're really doubling the interest that is right now has no designated.
And we can use it for whatever we want.
Correct. There are no restrictions on the
It
interest.
doesn't have to stay in the ARPA fund.
Correct.
So just so that I'm clear, you're saying that the interest that was accrued through investments was being dumped into a fund in the general fund, so designated but it wasn't.
There's a main account, an account specifically for interest investment.
But was it ARPA interest though?
It was from the ARPA investment.
But
So yes, it is ARPA.
Okay, so it was designated as such.
You can figure it out.
Yeah, yes.
It wasn't
The
designated.
treasurer can figure it out based on the.
Well, because she knows what
Yes.
was rolled off.
Yes,
So-
it is not specifically, there's not a line in the general fund that says ARPA investment. It's just rolled in. And so it's.
Okay. So we're now pulling that because
Correct.
she's giving us a number that says, hey, based on the investments of the ARPA, she knows exactly what interest was earned off of them.
Yes.
And so she can pull each one of those bonds off, give you that number, and that's how you came up with your number. And now we're saying, okay, we're gonna pull that out of interest in the general fund, which wasn't designated as to where it came from, it just was interest. And we're gonna put it back where it was supposed to go, which is in the ARPA funds. But that's gonna do two things. One, it's gonna increase that, and then it's also going to decrease what our general fund shows as a fund balance, which is gonna also decrease our monthly reserve.
Correct. Thank you.
Good job.
So just a few
Hey, I'm
things.
following.
Okay, good. A few things, if we were to, at the end of 23, if it had been in ARPA the whole time and, we hadn't made any other changes, then it would drop our monthly reserve to that. And kind of thinking that we took that 4 million, it was a strategic number to fund some of our capital. If we take it out of that assumption and then remove it from the budget number, then it really gets us right back to where we were. So, do you mess with the general fund balance in total? Do you remove money from, we were getting to a well-funded capital plan. But is this the better approach, as we start talking about what to do with the Lake County money? So again, it's not for decisions today. I just wanted to make you guys aware that I will be doing that entry.
You're poking the bear, though.
I know. I have to give you guys something to think on after 3.5 hours.
Right.
So, keeping all this in your head, so if you go to this handout that I gave you, so this is just general fund, and it's the first kind of pass. We have everything in, and usually non-departmental is the last thing. So this is kind of like a first look of where we're at. And so a few of the assumptions I have at the bottom. So for the general fund tax levy, if you look at the entire extension and you take just new growth, there are some other levies that need to be addressed this year, specifically VAC and FICA. But VAC and FICA are the ones that absolutely need an increase in. Yeah, and so I guess that's another thing to keep in mind as we really see the impact on the personnel line, that also affects FICA and IMRF funds. But for now, the assumption is if we just take a new growth only, move some things around to the levies that need to be addressed, this is where the general fund levy would be. It's about a 465,000 reduction from last year. And then this number here, this governmental, includes 5.136 million in Lake County money, which we had talked about not using for operating. Although I did use a little for operating because we have had increases in the variable direct costs in the jail for food and healthcare.
Well, and we said that was the offset for that. I mean, that was,
Yes.
so that's not, that's using the money to offset the extra fixed costs that we
Yes,
have
yeah.
associated with doing that, so.
So I took the balance of that and added it as an operating transfer out to the capital fund. And that kind of completely removes it from our operating budget in a way. And then where we're at right now, then that would require utilization of the general fund balance of 2.8 million.
Okay, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Something's not making sense to me here. So when I'm looking at the property tax total, and you're saying this is just for the general fund, I would, and you're saying that only utilizes new growth, your 2025 estimate, right? So if I took property taxes from last year, took out the 10,900,000 and whatever thousand, and only added new growth back in again, that delta should be way different.
So it's also reflective of movement between the other levies. So increasing FICA by $1 million.
You've taken from general fund and put it to FICA.
Yes.
Or to BAC.
We've also taken
This
from,
is just the general fund portion of the property tax.
yeah, and we also took 500,000 from matching.
Okay, so I don't
The new
want,
growth is 660.
so I don't want there to be the wrong perception then that if someone sees this document, that this is the total of all property taxes extended by the county. Because
This is just general fund.
I get it.
Right, but it's.
But
Total will be in the 64, 60.
correct, you say property taxes total here, and so it's optics, right? It's what people see.
Yes.
The total levy is 63,958,447.
Right, and.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I put in 63.5.
That's fine, and so maybe you need to put a little under your assumptions or somewheres on there, that this is, well, I'm just.
You know what, thank you, because to me, when I say general fund, I know, that's just the one.
Yeah, and
but I know that doesn't.
99.9% of everyone else around America is not gonna understand that, so we just need to be very clear about.
Okay.
This is a portion of the
This is not
total
something that I've
extension.
distributed, this is just kind of our first pass. And also too, this does not
But you're
include.
kind of presenting it in a public meeting, so
Well,
it becomes a public document. So if someone,
Fine.
Joe Schmo picks it up,
Yes,
I don't want Joe Schmo having the wrong impression of what's going on.
okay.
And the 63.5 million total levy, is that including new growth, the 660,000?
Only new growth,
But it is in that number, is 63.5.
yes.
Okay, got it.
And it's just, we have 5 scenarios in the budget policy, so,
That's like scenario 3.
yeah. And I guess worst case scenario would be the reduction or nothing, no new growth, no CPI. But I was trying to think about, taking new growth,
So what you're trying to tell us is currently we have a $2.8 million utilization of fund balance
with no supplementals.
with no supplementals, which is,
So Pete and I are meeting this afternoon, and kind of our first pass, the general fund ask is 3 million, but I think probably more of half what we would
again,
realistically
and
consider.
we class, whether you do 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, and C, or
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, we realize, but the ask from departments and elected officials in the general fund is, you're telling me 3 million.
Just under 3 million, yes.
Okay. So that's into account, and then you have your little, we're not gonna forget about your little blue box here,
Correct.
which is an additional 3.1 million.
Yes.
Okay. That's the good things that this committee gets to look at.
Right.
So if we go back to the ARPA interest that you were talking about, how much is included in this interest earnings? Is that ARPA interest included in this at all, in this line item, versus this?
On this one?
Yes, 95, line 90, or.
So I have not moved it yet, so there is a little bit in actual. But the projection for 25 does not include it.
Okay.
Which actually, thank you for bringing that up. If you notice on the treasurer's presentation, I think she had around 2, 3. And I know I like to always, since you guys get little pieces and then we roll it all up, I like to kind of go back and remind you like the little pieces and how it feeds in. So this number up here is primarily from the treasurer's presentation, and then we have a few funds that generate interest like in the circuit clerk's office. So that's exactly where that number.
So we have two, not, to me, two more major discussions that are gonna have to happen shortly. Is current budget as far as utilization of fund balance and how we close that gap. Second is what we're gonna do about the 2026, everyone keeps on, I mean, if public transit can call it a cliff, then we have a hill we gotta deal with.
We have a mountain.
We have a mountain, that's not what say a mountain.
Speed bump.
Compared to public transit?
Right, this is not as bad as Fairfield Transit, right, yeah.
We got a hill. Anyways, we still gotta deal with that. And then we still need to somehow have a discussion regarding the balance of the Lake County revenue that we have coming in minus our expenses that we are incurring for housing the inmates and what we're going to ultimately use those dollars for.
Yes, which we, we'll add when we talk with the supplementals, the capital requests for 25 as well.
Right.
Which includes this parking lot and the coroner's morgue remodel, those are the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, the board has been very clear that we don't want to use that for reoccurring expenses. That needs to be used for one-time fixed costs, just because you don't want to go down that rabbit hole like we did.
Right.
When we had the other jail revenue contract. And again, we don't know how long it will continue to last. My understanding is that it'll go into 25 at some point in time, and how long it'll last in 25 is.
My degree of confidence it's going to go well into 25.
Okay, well.
But it's not done yet.
Correct, so.
We have a contract until December.
Right, but it's a contract that we'll take them if they give them to us, that's.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I get that, but similar to other things, we're also relying on another county with their politics and their stuff that they got going on, working through a budget, and I don't,
Every reason why it made sense a year ago, it still makes sense.
Right, but it's not like you can budget it. I mean, that's you can budget some level of certainty and degree of, but anyways. So those are all things that are exciting things that we get to try and figure out. What else do you have for us?
On our blue box, are these only the ones that we think will continue? Because I thought some of the items that are funded by ARPA were expected to also leave with ARPA. So, like, I could have sworn, maybe it's bad memory, that like an auditing software was just for the ARPA stuff, and it would be, when we don't have ARPA, we don't need it anymore. And that may not be this piece, this 20,000, but
So
I thought there was
think
at
there's some decisions to make, but
Yeah.
not, like some of the big ones, the video, the
Right, that has to stay.
Microsoft enterprise agreement,
Yeah.
the election center rent, which we're in a contract, so that has to stay, I think, 3 years past. The ROE lease probably, but the other ones, a decision can be made if we're going to discontinue using that. Some of the positions.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we gotta absorb all this. I'm
Right.
just saying that's the discussion that we have to have.
For sure, the Microsoft and the cameras.
Well, and the election center.
Yeah. For a couple more years.
Yeah. So you have several million that you're gonna kind of have to do. I think some of the personnel issues are things that, you know, as a board, we have to have that discussion. Are we gonna continue those positions, whatever they were that were created? Or are we getting similar to our whole policy on grants? You know, if the grant goes away, the position goes away, you know? So, yes.
2 comments. I just want to be mindful, you were talking about possibly 3 being what is considered what you would prefer as the best scenario.
I'm not saying that's what I would prefer.
But you distinctly said worst case on 1 and 2, and I don't think we want to look at it that way. Right now, we're looking at possibility thinking and what can be. So that's one thing, just to make sure that we keep ourselves and that we're looking right now at collaboration and possibilities and what can be. And then the other thing is, Teresa, you're absolutely correct. Every single ARPA discussion was that it would go away when ARPA went away. There was nothing that we were looking at when we went through those that was going to increase the burden to the taxpayers. You're correct. And it's all public record, so it could be found if we need it. So just saying.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
No.
No? Anyone else by your committee? Okay.
Mike?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I truly believe that your points about the future discussions are absolute. And I think that these are going to be very weighty and very significant contributions as we look to the future. And so I'm expecting and I'm hoping that we focus on those conversations that are going to lead us to foundational positions that we're going to have have behind it as we look to the future in terms of budgeting next year and the year after that. So my point is that we have a lot of reports, we have a lot of considerations to be making by the various departments as the Finance Committee. But we're going to have to schedule time in our meetings to make sure that we go through those weighty decisions so that we can make appropriate recommendations prior to the board. So I just want to make sure that we're planning properly the time that's going to be required for those weighty decisions as you have outlined.
100% agree. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 12:21.
So moved.
Through Kelly and Terry. All those in favor say aye. Aye.